This is emotion art. Life is a canvas. You are an artist. Your job is to create the art that only you can create, with the emotions that only you have, as you move through this brief moment of three-dimensional existence. It's a rare opportunity that we have, so be the artist that only you can be, for a world that needs you. Because here you are, perfect, just the way you are. Welcome. This is a conversation I had with an old friend of mine. I first met David in my late teens and got to know him and have some adventures with him through my 20s. And then we mostly lost touch as our lives got busier, went separate ways. And then a couple weeks ago, his wife reached out to me to let me know that David has entered hospice care after an 8-year battle with thyroid cancer. And she's letting his friends know so they have a chance to reconnect and say some goodbyes. Thank you, Annette. I really appreciate your foresight and your energy to help facilitate these reconnections in the midst of everything else you have going on. And David, thank you for being willing to record a conversation and be vulnerable as you face a very mysterious and often really difficult part of life. Being invited to sit next to you and look through the window of your perspective onto an ever-changing universe, an ever-changing existence. It's a humbling experience and a perspective I really appreciate. We had a few distractions throughout the conversation. That's the way life works, and it's beautiful. One common thread I feel like everyone who's been involved in this process shares is that we don't know what we're doing. I guess it really does take a village. If any of you who listen to this conversation feel like you have answers to some of the questions that were raised, or have ideas or thoughts or prayers that you want to share, please do. If you don't know how to get a hold of me or someone who knows me, my email's in the show notes. There are a lot of ideas and wisdom out there, and I'm taking notes because I don't think this is going to be the last conversation like this that I'm part of. I don't know how this story will play out, but the best medical minds that we have given David about 6 months left in this format. So we're pushing this conversation to the front of the line. That way, David gets to be a part of as much of it as possible. Hopefully much more than we think. Angela, thanks for all your extra work helping me edit this. And Buddy, thank you for going out of your way to wrap it up in your wonderful music. I really appreciate you guys. We are each facing our own mortality every day that we open our eyes and look out on the world around us, but I don't think most of us are as aware of that as David is right now. So here's a unique perspective from a human who can see the end. Or the beginning. Beautiful either way. Enjoy.
Welcome to Emotion Art.
Emotion art, where we sit down and make art with our emotions.
Emotion Art.
Creative energy moving outward in conscious expression of feeling.
Emotion art.
Emotion art.
Emotion Art.
Emotion because we are literally made of emotion. Art because everything we do wants to be art. Emotion art. Feels.
Emotion art.
It's all beautiful. Emotion Art.
Emotion art.
A space for emotional art. Creative energy moving outward in conscious expression.
Emotion art.
An emotion art gallery.
This is emotion art.
You're welcome. All right. We're in business, and I have no agenda and no timeline.
Well, probably an introduction first.
Yeah. Who are you?
I'm David Bacon. And that's a, more complicated question than it appears, naturally.
I try to only ask questions that you can answer in whatever way you want. Well, if you were to just give a snapshot of just kind of who you see yourself to be.
Well, I'm in my 50s. kind of a Renaissance man. I've done a variety of things in a variety of times.
A Renaissance man.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Well, I've dabbled in different things and not just had like one career working in a factory for 30 years. I've worked in construction. I worked in sales, customer service, pipe smoker, pipe collector, ran a business on eBay for a while, just a variety of things.
Trying to think about how long ago I first met you. I think it was when I came back from the Amish, right? When I was like 17.
Yeah.
So I've known you for a long time.
It's been over 20 years, at least.
At least.
Jeff figured out yesterday that he's known me for 25. And, I took Isaac to the hair salon in the Walmart, and he had his first salon haircut because he just come back from the Amish.
My brother.
Yeah.
I remember you as kind of a mysterious figure. You were like a cool uncle almost.
Yeah.
I picture you in over like a trench coat.
Yeah.
Like, as I think back, I think it was more like bomber jacket type stuff that you would wear. But you always had this really mysterious air.
Really?
You were always up to something mysterious. Probably not intentional.
Yeah. It did kind of push the envelope with the community at the time.
That's for sure. The whole abandoned church.
Yeah, the fellowship, yeah.
You've always been a thinker. And you've always been attracted. I think even back then, you were very much at a Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah, I joined the Eastern Orthodox Church, I think, in 2001. And I first visited a Orthodox church back in 95. So it took me several years to kind of get over some of my Western framework. Trying to look at an Eastern thing from a Western perspective is a tricky proposition. So it took me a while to kind of get through some of that.
So what were you before that?
Before I was involved with the Home Fellowship, I'd been involved with the Christian Missionary Alliance Church for a while. And before that, I grew up Conservative Baptist.
Okay.
And I was in a church where they put the conservative in Conservative Baptist.
Gotcha. So no hanging out with snakes or praying in tongues and stuff like that? No. Okay. What attracted you to Eastern?
An old friend of mine invited me to church and I visited. And I just really liked it the first time I experienced it. And it is more of a living kind of experience. They look at things more experientially. That's why they do processions and prostrations and different physical things during their services, because it's more of an immersive experience. But I had some theological hangups I had to deal with the Orthodox Church from my Baptist upbringing. They eventually ended up providing the answer to a lot of the things that I was just didn't sit well with me or feel right, like the pre-tribulation rapture, stuff like that.
So what would you say, like if you could nutshell the difference between the Eastern and Western mindset in this Christian perspective, like what is it? Because I've spent a lot of time reading books and thinking about Western and Eastern, but it's more from just a general worldview. And so it's always going to like Buddhism and different things like that. And it's just the mindsets, the thought structure.
Anything Eastern is going to be more mystical by nature. So for instance, the Catholics have a definition for how communion happens, how the bread and wine become the body and blood of Jesus. And the Lutherans have their definition. And the Orthodox just say it's a divine mystery. You don't have to explain it. In Eastern thought, it's okay to have mystery. The biggest thing theologically for me is the evangelical church really pushes that if you become a Christian, you can escape hell and go to heaven. The Eastern church pushes having oneness with God and this process called theosis, where you grow closer to God and ultimately become one with God, which, seems heretical to some evangelicals. But it's not about whether you go to heaven or hell. It's about your relationship with God.
So what happens after this?
I don't know.
Like, what's the Eastern concept of what happens after this?
I'm not sure. They're divided. Some think hell is eternal. Some think it isn't. I personally think that some people may suffer in hell for a while to atone for their sins and then essentially become a part of heaven.
In mystical ways.
And that's the thing. We don't have to understand everything. The reformers set out, in fact, this is interesting. One of the books that had the most profound effect on me becoming Orthodox was written by a Baptist pastor. And it was because he said some things that just couldn't be true. And if they were true, I wanted no part of it. He said that the Western reformers, to escape the focus on superstition and stuff of the Catholic Church, set out to create a religion that was both rational and pragmatic. And I was like, religion isn't supposed to be rational or pragmatic. And if that's what it is, then that's not where I want to pitch my tent.
Then that makes sense that you would be drawn to the mystical because they don't need ration or pragmatism.
I mean, if it wasn't for the Eastern Orthodox Church, I'd probably become Buddhist.
I feel like I hear you saying that the Eastern Orthodox Church satisfies the part of you that's drawn to Buddhism.
Well, to Eastern mysticism in general, yeah.
Interesting. Well, you definitely put down roots since I knew you.
Yeah.
Like, could you walk me through what has brought you, like, just kind of the overall snapshot of your life up until kind of right now, how you find yourself here?
So I joined the church in 2001. 2012, I got married. I have 2 daughters. They're 9 and 10 now. Anastasia and Genevieve, hello. Was diagnosed with cancer 2017 and have just recently gone on hospice care and given about 6 months to live.
When did you say you were diagnosed?
2017, March. So it's been
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years dealing with it. And they said at the time they diagnosed me that it had spread so much that I'd probably had the cancer for 10 to 15 years before I was diagnosed.
Wow. Pancreatic.
No, thyroid.
Thyroid.
Yeah. No, pancreatic cancer grows much quicker. I'd have been dead by now. And usually the neck bulges out when somebody gets thyroid cancer, so they spot it. But for me, the nodule of cancer stayed small, and it sent cells throughout the body to make new tumors.
How do you feel about that?
It is what it is. That's how life is, you know.
But you're not looking for pragmatism. You're looking for...
I mean, I feel okay with it because I need to be. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, spiritually, I'm ready. You know, there's a lot of physical things I'd like to do before I go, you know, write letters for my daughters and stuff and do some things for Annette and stuff. But spiritually, I'm ready.
Physically, you're not.
Well, I'm a procrastinator. So I'll be down to the wire trying to get things done. You know, that's just how I am.
And there's always something to do.
Yeah.
How have you gone through the process of coming to terms with this? I mean, 8 years is a long time.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot of ups and downs, I imagine.
I feel like God gave me an alarm clock and I squandered a lot of that time. And I could have been way more productive doing things, you know, because I'm a procrastinator.
Well, as a fellow procrastinator, I can understand that. What do you feel like is your most regrettable squander? Like, what do you wish you would have done?
I don't know. There's a massive pipe collection that's being sorted and stuff right now from my business on eBay when I sold pipes. And it would have been nice to have already done that and have that all sorted and figured out and, you know, sold or consigned or whatever. So Annette doesn't have to worry about that. That's probably the biggest thing is the pipe collection. And I'm a collector of collections. So I have a whiskey collection, a watch collection, a knife collection, you know, and on and on. So it's just getting a lot of physical things in order. But
how has it been for your wife and girls?
It's been really tough on the girls. And part of that's my fault because I just don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah. As a male raised in the Western culture, that is not surprising.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're learning how to talk about it?
A little bit. I'm trying to. And there's some resources that they're using to help them with their feelings and stuff. But they have big feelings and they kind of act out a little bit. And I don't even know how to talk to Annette about it, you know, which is unfortunate. But, you know, obviously I've never gone through this experience before.
First time for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't believe you get a second or a third opportunity.
You just do the best you can.
Yeah.
I've kind of been talking about this with my family and just thinking about it. I'm fascinated by the other side. I mean, the mystical world is just captivating to me. And I'm curious what questions people would ask somebody who is standing on the brink, facing their mortality.
It's not really that scary. Maybe it is for some people, but for me, I have a little bit of anxiety over it, but it's just not really that scary.
What do you hope is next?
The afterlife, you know, plain and simple. Yeah, I think it's pretty well established, even scientifically, the immortality of the soul. And I think it's going to go to a good place. I'm not entirely sure whether souls go straight to heaven. I think in Revelations it says that the souls of the believers are under the altar of God before his throne. So there's got to be some kind of a waiting place before the new heaven and the new earth that it talks about in Revelations. So whatever that waiting place is like, I'm sure it'll be really fun. They'll probably have better whiskey than I have.
Yeah. I suspect that's true. Everybody that looks at death is scared by it, in my experience. People are terrified. But I don't think fear is the only thing. And you just said it's not that scary. I mean, why do you feel like that is? Is it because of your faith, or is it because here you are as a human?
Oh, it's totally because of my faith.
Okay.
I expect to be retrieved by a guardian angel and taken wherever I'm going. And there may be some mudroom where we clean ourselves up a little bit before we see God.
Purgatory?
No.
No. Scratch that word from the record.
No, you don't have suffering in a mudroom.
Okay. Gotcha. It's a cleanup room.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, who knows, really? Unfortunately, nobody's really given a detailed report about what it's like on the other side. I think that's part of what attracts us to want to know about what it might be like.
I ain't going to pretend that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, from a Christian perspective, I mean, don't you feel like you've gotten a report from Jesus who's seen the other side?
Yeah, somewhat. We get glimpses of it in the scriptures and stuff, of what it's like. We get glimpses of the worship of God in heaven before his throne with the saints and the martyrs and the angels and stuff. And for us, experientially, we believe every Sunday when we get together for our divine liturgy that we ascend to the very throne of God and that our worship is in heaven and mystically, and it's connected to the heavenly worship.
So I feel like you're at peace.
For the most part. I mean, I have anxiety because it is unknown a little bit, but like I said, I'm ready. I'm not afraid of it.
That's awesome.
Hopefully it'll all have a natural death, and when death comes, it'll be as a friend, not an enemy. I think that's part of how people see death. They see it as the enemy.
Like there's a struggle between life and death or something.
Yeah.
So you don't see death as the enemy because it's just they enter the mudroom and clean up and move to the next thing.
I think it's going to be kind of an unnatural state for the soul to be ripped from the body. In fact, in the Orthodox Church, we believe the soul lingers around the body for 40 days before it goes. I should have mentioned that earlier. Before it goes to where it's headed.
So you feel like you're going to be seeing what happens.
Yeah, I'll see the funeral service, and that's why they do a 40-day memorial for prayers too, at the end of the 40 days. So I'll be able to see my family and see things. I don't know if I'll be able to come back after that. That's something I just don't know about. I haven't read anything on that particular subject. I know some people have. Some saints and stuff have come back, years and years after they died and performed miracles or saved drowning kids or done things.
So you feel like you'll be able to kind of be a force of consolation through that for your family? Or do you feel like you'll have any influence?
Oh, I won't have any influence, I don't think, but I'll at least be able to observe. There might be a way to have influence. I don't know. There are some people who have. There are people, recently dead people that visited their family members and stuff that I've read stories about, but I'm not sure exactly whether that's an option or how that would work.
You feel like you'll kind of retain your memories, what you have, and you'll be fully yourself still.
Yeah.
That was a question that someone suggested, like, what do you want to take to the other side? But you're like, I'm taking everything.
Yeah. Well, in the Orthodox Church, we also believe marriage is eternal. So it doesn't end at death. So obviously that means we're going to remember people.
And meet back up. I mean, if you believe in an eternal existence, life doesn't even register next to that.
And I'm sure it'll seem like a short period of time, but there is that time where the soul exists by itself outside of the body. But then after the resurrection, we're given resurrected bodies. And I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like. I'm just pretty sure it won't have cancer.
Probably won't exist in a three-dimensional reality.
Yeah.
So people talk about the cycle of grief or the stages of grief.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you experienced that, went through that?
I don't think I have yet, no.
Ooh. Yet?
Yeah. I'm a procrastinator, what can I say?
But you feel that you are going to have to go through that when the time is right?
Maybe not. I mean, you don't always have to. That's just kind of the normalized clinical approach to grief. I don't think everybody has to go through the cycles of grief to grieve. And I don't even know what I would grieve.
Have you grieved before in your life? Have you grieved anything?
I've lost parents and loved ones and stuff, yes.
Do you feel like you were intimate with grief?
I don't know if I was intimate, but familiar with it, I'd say.
I mean, I know in my past, when I lost people, I didn't know how to fully feel my feelings. So I just eventually, I don't know.
But this is different. It's not me losing people. It's people losing me. So they're the ones that are going to grieve. And for me, I'm getting an upgrade.
Your grieving time is right now. Because I know, as a father, that there's no way that you do not feel grief about the time you're going to miss out on that you could have had
There
with your
is
kids.
that, yeah. Yeah, I do. I do have envy for those that get to raise their kids all the way to adulthood. I think about that every day.
How does that make you feel?
Sad.
I mean, you said envy, but
Yeah,
sad. Grief? Sounds like grief.
Yeah. Probably is.
So you find that you don't need consolation.
Not really.
Do the people around you need your consolation?
Yeah, I think so.
I wonder if that's a common way that happens, that the dying console the living.
I don't know.
Kind of makes poetic sense, especially with your perspective of it.
Mhm.
Okay. So you've gone through some sort of a process of coming to terms with this, probably up and down with many different versions and cycles. I mean, what has that been like?
Not really. It's just been kind of an easy process for me, really.
Like one day to the next, just like
Yeah.
it was before.
I mean, it is what it is. We have to accept reality. We don't get to make our own. We don't get to change things. We just have to, when we confront it, we have to accept it. That's just how it is. I mean, sure, I don't know. Maybe I should yell and scream and get angry at God or something, like some people might do.
And what would that accomplish?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there is joy that you found in this process?
It's not really a joyful process. It's still like you're saying, there's still built-in sadness in the process. So I haven't really found joy in it, especially since, it's a little painful, and having cancer is not a very fun way to die.
You experience like a constant amount of intense pain?
No, I've been blessed to have very little pain for how many tumors I have, but I do get migrating pain that moves around, but it's been much better than it could be.
Do you know how many tumors you have?
Let's see, 3 on the spine, 3 in the neck, 3 or so on the ribs, some on the hip and tailbone, a couple in the sternum, 1 behind the left eye in the skull, 1 in the base of the skull, a few more in the skull, across the back, small ones. I'm sure I'm leaving some out, but quite a few. Oh, and some on the lung too.
How do you feel towards the tumors?
Not happy, especially about the one in the sternum that broke through the skin and is now living completely outside the skin. Yeah, not too happy about that one, because it requires, bandaging every couple days and so on.
Otherwise, it'll get infected or something?
I could get infected or leak fluid or whatever. So,
is it more painful that way?
a little bit probably.
Oh, it's so surreal to think about this. So, what have you tried? I mean, in my conversations with people, I'm constantly talking to people who have all kinds of very strong opinions about different types of alternative medicines and magic cures and stuff like that. And I'm telling you what, that's the first thing everyone wants to say, even if I'm not the one.
Yeah.
People are still going to say, "Oh, here's what you need to do. This is all you need to do. It'll cure it every time."
I've heard that so many times from so many people. And I've actually tried quite a few natural things. I tried conventionally everything they have to offer. And the problem with thyroid cancer is they have a very well-developed treatment that works most of the time. So that's stifled new research into new cures, because they have one that works most of the time very effectively, and that's radioactive iodine. So the first thing they did in 2017 was remove my thyroid and give me radioactive iodine. So the tumors absorb the iodine, because that's what thyroid cells do. And then the radiation kills them and they shrink down. And it worked with very limited effect. I found that the tumors that had received external beamed radiation responded better and absorbed more of the iodine. So I had more of the tumors before the second treatment exposed to the beamed radiation, and did a little better the second time. But I ended up doing 3 treatments. And they only go up to 4 maybe if it would be beneficial, but it makes you high risk for leukemia if you do 4 treatments. So they ended up doing 3 treatments total. And then I was actually on a chemotherapy drug, a clinical trial drug with an infusion that kept me stable for 3.5 years. So there's a big chunk of time where there was something conventional that kept me going for a while. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So that was super helpful. But I tried all kinds of alternative stuff. Most of it I researched myself. Some of it people told me about. The funniest one is disulfiram, the Antabuse, the drug they give to alcoholics so they stop drinking. Is known to help with tumors attached to bones. So I went on that, and I had a weird allergic reaction to it and ended up psychotic and in a mental ward detoxing.
What?
Yeah, it was 2019.
What did that feel like?
It was pretty crazy.
Like psychotic, as in like you didn't know?
Just weird stuff. Like for a while, I thought my mission in life was to drink all the hospital's coffee.
You've always been a coffee drinker, though,
So they
right?
went from unlimited coffee to a 2 coffee limit on my account. I know that because I ended up going back to the same mental facility 2 years later. When my dad died, I had a little bit of a breakdown as well.
Related to your dad's death?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was really a tough one to go through.
When was that?
That was 2021. That was during COVID.
And firmly facing your own mortality. I mean, what phase were you at then? What was your mindset for yourself?
I can't really remember back then. I wasn't really thinking about myself as much.
Okay.
So I've tried a lot of things. I haven't done baking soda. I heard that's the big popular one on the internet. It's the baking soda. But I've tried lots of natural stuff. I'm trying a comfrey root tea right now to see if that helps. In fact, I should drink this.
Actually, now that you're talking about drinking that, it comes to my memory that I was going to bring that chicken quesadilla in here.
No, that's okay. We can have that later.
I figure maybe when we have the interruption.
Yeah.
So comfrey root,
Yep.
what is the claim there?
It's supposed to help the tumors shrink. It's hard on the liver, so I'd avoided it before. I looked at it a couple years ago, and even my naturopath that I consulted with said it's really hard on the liver, and you might have permanent liver damage, and to not do it. But at this point, it's worth the risk. And just because I'm at peace with things and I'm ready to go, doesn't mean I'm not going to go down not fighting.
Yes.
I think it's possible to have kind of both mindsets.
So you're a bit of a duality right now.
Yep.
Surrendered and fighting.
Yep.
How long have you been drinking comfrey root?
No, for a couple weeks.
How will you know, or can you tell? Is there any?
I don't know. I have to go off of hospice care and back to regular care to be able to get any imaging or anything done. So I just check. Some of the tumors are actual, like I have one in the sternum that's a small bump in the chest, and I have one that's kind of a bump in the back of the head. So I just feel them every day to see if they're smaller. That'll be one indicator. But the big thing is I'll feel better.
How have you felt differently since you started
I haven't.
comfrey root?
Yeah, it hasn't seemed to make a difference yet.
What's the craziest, like, magic cure alternative thing that
Let's see, I
someone suggested?
I tried the apricot pits for a while. And
My dad swears by that.
yeah, so did your grandpa.
Okay.
Yeah, because he read a book about it.
Maybe that's why dad does.
Spread the word about it, yeah.
Dad eats that stuff every day, as far as I know, even now.
Yeah. I wonder how many he's eaten. I think for me, one of the problems I have with some of this stuff is it might be helpful for people that don't have as much cancer as me, but there's a lot of tumors to go after. The craziest thing I did so far, I think, was the clinical trial, because it left me kind of beat up and in worse shape. But they did a T-cell therapy where they removed my T-cells and modified them supposedly to attack the cancer, and then gave them back to me, and nothing happened. Except to get me ready for that, they had to put me on a chemo drug for a week that caused hair loss and other stuff, and weakness and stuff like that. So, and I think they overhydrated me at the hospital and gave me fluid around the lungs, which I'm dealing with. So it was kind of weird to come home from the hospital feeling worse than when I checked in. But I guess one of the weirdest ones is there's a dog dewormer that's popular. There's lots of buzz on the internet about it, fenbendazole. I took that for a few months and it didn't seem to do anything. So I'm currently taking it now at a higher dose to see if it might do something. But, I'm not scratching my ears or anything. So,
Well, if it's a dog dewormer, I don't think that's going to make you scratch your ears.
yeah.
Did it make you feel different or weird? Would it
No.
have side effects?
Nope, no side effects. Most of the stuff hasn't had side effects.
And no other effect either.
Yeah. But I've optimistically tried as many things as I could that seem to make sense.
Well, you've probably had things suggested many more times than you would have
Yeah.
time to try.
I tried a low-dose naltrexone. It's a drug they give opioid addicts. and it temporarily blocks the T cells so that they build up. And the idea is on a really low dose, it'll block the T cells like while you sleep. You take it at night, and then while you sleep, it builds up this massive backlog of T cells ready to do something, and then it releases them, and so they can attack the cancer. And that was supposed to be a big thing. One of the things I did early on is I got a book, a real thick book from a doctor in Canada. It's a naturopathic, basically encyclopedia for natural cancer methods. And there were little things I picked up along the way, like red wine is good after you get radiation. It helps the body process radiation. So that was helpful. But none of the stuff in the book, like the naltrexone, seemed to help.
Have there been any things that people have suggested that were just too crazy or too out there to try?
Not really.
So you've really tried everything as far as you can.
Yeah.
And there's no end of other people's opinions.
Yeah. I mean, I could try the baking soda. That's a simple one. But the crazy thing is, I think personally that there is somehow, somewhere, a simple cure for cancer that they just haven't discovered yet. And that's why I've tried so many different things, is I think some things work for some people. And, everybody's a little different, and the way they focus on cancer, like it's genetics or metabolic or whatever, in terms of how to attack it, there's a lot of division in the medical establishment, conventional medicine on that too. I think at the end of the day, someday it's going to be like leprosy. We're going to cure it.
Maybe AI will help us figure that out.
Yeah, maybe.
How do you feel about AI?
It's just, sign of the times. Technology advances. Yeah, it can seem scary to people, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a machine with a power cord.
You're not really someone who fights change?
I embrace it, kicking and screaming.
Okay.
Every step of the way,
Duality.
reluctantly. And then I'm like, this is kind of cool,
Mm-hmm. A creature of duality you are.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess.
So how has it been dealing with other people trying to give you advice, how have people showed up for you?
It's
outside of your family.
It's been really helpful for the most part. It's a little annoying to hear kind of the same things, some of the times. Like I've gotten, several people that have suggested a certain thing, or somebody who's suggested several things. It can be a little annoying at times, but it's overall very helpful. People have been very helpful with their suggestions and input.
And they've been respectful of them?
Yeah.
Hasn't been a lot of
Yeah, I don't get a deluge of stuff, So it's been good.
Would have figured you'd have a deluge.
Yeah. I do know quite a few people, so.
You do.
Yeah.
And you know a lot of opinionated people.
Yeah.
With a lot of different opinions.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've been reconnecting with people, or?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I actually ran into an old friend of mine from growing up. We kind of grew up together that I hadn't seen in years, at a 40th anniversary reunion at a church that I got invited to. It happened to be his church here in Oregon City. So that was kind of neat. But I've reconnected with people. Like you, I haven't seen you, and up until last week, I hadn't seen you in a few years.
A lot of years, I think.
Yeah.
I don't even know that I could remember the last time I saw you.
I remember you were here, and we did. I think we did gin and tonics and had cigars on the patio once.
I remember that.
Yeah, you liked both the gins a lot. They quit making both of those, unfortunately.
I don't remember what they were.
There was one Scottish gin and then one American gin. Yeah.
Huh. Gin is the one alcohol that I actually kind of enjoy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never been a whiskey drinker. And we smoke on the backboard.
Yeah. Good cigars too. Yeah, I missed the cigar smoking days.
I mean, it's a little tough to smoke anything when you're on oxygen.
That's true.
There's a sign on your front door that's like, do not bring fire in here.
Yeah. I think the tobacco will be better in heaven anyway.
You think there's tobacco in heaven?
I don't know.
I sure hope so.
It's one of the noblest plants. I'm sure it'll make it.
How cool would it be to be able to use something like tobacco without anything bad happening? But I mean, who's to say if there's tobacco there, then maybe I don't know.
There won't be the companies that put the additives and chemicals in it that make it addictive.
That's true.
So there'll be that issue. Maybe I should have a pipe put in my coffin just in case.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
So obviously the pipe won't go anywhere. It'll just lay in the ground.
I mean, when you're walking in the mystical world, you never know.
No.
Because yeah, that's true. Does the pipe have any sort of a soul or spirit or
No, they don't. I don't think physical objects have souls.
What about animals?
I think they have souls. I'm not sure what happens to animals. There's not much really written about it that I've read. But they definitely seem to have souls.
It actually makes sense to me that physical, inanimate objects have souls.
There actually have been some stories of people in some of their studies of the existence of an immortal soul. There's been studies where people have been visited by the spirit of their grandmother and a cat or something at the same time to take them into the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been stories like that. So I do think that animals end up in the afterlife with us.
Okay. The way my logic works, this body that you have is made out of the same substance of this stool or chair.
Got a lot more water in it, but yeah.
I'm saying substance at a much smaller level than that, where you're down to the subatomic level.
Okay.
Where, at least as far as I understand it, it's just light spinning around itself.
Okay.
Because at the core of matter, that's all it is. And everything is the same at the core of it. And so to me, a collection makes a thing that has a resonance, that when you kick it, it kicks back. So why would this thing not have some sort of a representation? Obviously not the same as you. It's not a human. It's not consciousness. It doesn't have that breath of life or whatever.
Yeah.
And
that's the answer to the question.
But why doesn't it have a resonance, a soul, like using a different word instead of soul, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe that's how your grandmother could show up with it.
Yeah, but she didn't show up with a stool.
But did she have clothes on?
Probably. I don't know.
Maybe the clothes have resonance.
I didn't read too much into that study, so I'm not sure.
Clothed in light.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure on that. I'm pretty sure that people have clothes, but not stools. And if you kick it, it doesn't kick you back.
I don't know. If I kick that thing, my foot's going to hurt or rebound.
Yeah, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to kick you back.
Oh, it doesn't have a foot to kick me back. That's true. I mean, figuratively, it will respond.
So I don't see that as a response. It'll just tip over because of gravity.
But that's the kicking back. It has a response.
Well, now you're talking about gravity.
What is gravity? I mean, I just read a book that was almost impossible for me to read.
Yeah.
Called The Biggest Ideas in the Universe by a guy named Sean Carroll. And it's mostly math equations, and I couldn't follow it. But what it did give me was a mental image of what gravity is.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of escape from our three-dimensional way of thinking to get to it.
Yeah, and I've never really done a deep dive on gravity.
Because gravity is not a force.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah, and thankfully it's consistent.
Sean Carroll says that gravity, he says, imagine having a flat plane. You put a little ball on that flat plane and it just sits there. There's nothing to move it. And then you put something heavy there and it depresses into the flat plane. Yeah. That depression is what gravity is. Yeah. So because we're talking the space-time. So you have coordinates X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And T. That's the flat plane. The X, Y, Z is all we can consciously experience because we feel like we're flowing through time.
But there's still, even though the depression is gravity, there's still gravity in the air above, because if you lifted the ball and let go of it, it would drop.
So what I'm saying, I don't have this stuff clearly figured out. I'm not a scientist. I never will. But outside of Newtonian physics, in the fourth dimension, in another dimension, like if you were able to step outside of this dimension that looks to us like X, Y, and Z would look like flat, because actually it would be a sphere. But to us standing on it, it appears flat.
Okay.
Because it's space-like directions plus time-like directions. Okay. And on that space and time-like directions, something like planet Earth is an intensely focused amount of mass. It's got a huge mass that's condensed, and it exerts a pressure down on that space-time So then anyone that's the closer you are to Earth, the more your descent on that space-time continuum.
Okay.
And then, so then a black hole is basically like trillions and trillions and trillions of Earths or suns even, all condensed into something that's very, very small.
Yeah.
And that amount of weight is so heavy that it's sucking down so deep that even light can't escape the spiral and you can't see it and stuff.
Yeah. I think I kind of get what you're saying.
You probably
But I
get
don't
it
have
as good
the-
as I do then.
I don't have the mind for it.
No, it's just interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I am a person for rabbit trails, so.
Yeah. Totally fine.
How did we get talking about gravity?
I don't know.
Hmm.
The stool.
Okay, do you have a lot of people that are trying to ask you like existential questions about how you feel about everything, and kind of like some of the questions I'm asking, like do you get this kind of thing a lot?
No.
How do most
I get
people
a
approach you?
few. I get a few kind of fundamentalists like evangelicals and stuff that are concerned that I'm right with Jesus. You know, I get some of that.
How do you feel about someone who's concerned whether you're right with Jesus?
That's their perspective. And again, like I said at the beginning, that to some evangelicals, the purpose of Christianity is to save you from hell and give you a ticket to heaven. So I guess it's fair that some of my friends want to make sure that I have my boarding pass. That's just from their perspective. That's just looking out for me.
I don't think anyone actually knows anything. To me, it's just it's all interesting exploration.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. I think I told you last time I was here, I'm almost a little bit jealous of you.
Yeah. Well,
That's not true though. It's just that
on
fascination.
some level it could be, but yeah.
Simply that I feel like in a measurably short amount of time, you're going to have the ability to ask questions that I don't have the ability to ask yet.
Yeah.
And to grasp things that I don't.
I might be too awe-stricken to ask questions.
Well, if you're not, and if you happen to start asking questions and have any inclination to at all, try to reach across, because there's a lot of us over here that are really curious.
I know. I just think that's why there are limitations in place.
You think that they're arbitrarily placed limitations?
No, they're not arbitrary. I think God has certain limitations in place with the dead communicating with the living, and that's why it was condemned in the Old Testament.
Why? Why the limitations? What's the purpose?
I think people need a sense of mystery. If they had all the answers, then they'd live their lives based on having all the answers. I think that's cheating. Like having a trick deck of cards or something. I don't think that's how life is.
And humans will always cheat.
I mean, going back to the garden, it was take the easy way out, try to get the answers.
You think that's what was, so you're talking about the
forbidden fruit, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They wanted the knowledge, they wanted the answers to their questions, and so they broke their relationship with God to do it. That was taking the easy way out.
Did they get answers?
I don't know. Probably. But not the ones they wanted.
So, well, I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit trail, but it's like, why then? Like, what was the tree even there for? Why did God do that?
Why did he tempt us?
Yeah.
Give us something we couldn't have.
And couldn't resist?
We could.
As a human?
We could have resisted.
The opportunity for knowledge?
There's an old book I read back in the 80s called Escape from the Fallen Planet, about somebody in a spaceship that crashes on Earth that's from a planet where they actually lived in the garden peacefully for generations. And so he tries to get a spaceship fixed as quick as he can so he doesn't get corrupted by our world.
That sounds so similar to Out of the Silent Planet.
Yeah.
It's C.S. Lewis, right? C.S. Lewis wrote a space trilogy.
Yeah.
That's not what you're talking about.
No.
What is it called?
It's called Escape from the Fallen Planet.
Oh, I'm going to look that up. That sounds
look that up.
extremely interesting. He's
Yeah.
like tinkering fast because he's like, get me that guy. Because he didn't want to be corrupted
Yeah.
by the searching
By
out
the
for
fallen,
knowledge.
by living in a fallen world.
But if he's in a spaceship, that means he really loves knowledge too. So how did he not fall?
In the garden living peacefully with God, they got what they needed. I mean, that was God created man, I think, to have relationship. And that's why that's why I really like the Orthodox Church perspective on that it's about not just knowing God, but becoming one with God. They call that, again, theosis, this idea that we can become by grace what he is by nature.
Is there a distinction between becoming one with God and becoming God?
Yeah.
What is
that
that?
we by grace become what he is by nature. So it's by his grace that we can coexist with him. But it's obviously not by our nature. We weren't created as gods. We were created as people. And the creator is always more powerful than the creature.
But in this becoming one, is there still that imbalance, or does it all just even out?
I'm not sure.
That's hard to wrap my mind around.
Yeah,
Really hard.
I'm not sure.
Kind of like space-time.
Yeah.
I imagine these are mysteries I'm going to be looking into for the rest of my natural life.
Well, hopefully you'll have a long one and you'll get a lot of answers without cheating.
Oh no, I'm going to cheat every chance I get.
Maybe tripping down Mushroom Lane might be a way of cheating.
Done it. And it was a hell of a cheat.
Yeah.
But it's traumatic. It's violent.
Yeah.
It's damaging.
Yeah.
And for the right person, it can be transformative.
I do have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking you a personal
Please,
question.
I would love
Have
it.
you ever dropped acid?
I think I've only done that one time.
Okay.
But since you're asking me a personal question, I'm going to give you an honest answer. I have dropped acid. But on that day, what started with acid, I then took ketamine, mushrooms, smoking weed the whole way through. There were so many things layered on top of each other.
Yeah.
This was towards the end of my journey with what I call plant medicines, because all of these names have such charged meanings. But I can't say that I have a really experience of what acid itself is like, because there were so many substances.
That does make it tough.
And nothing's been the same since,
Yeah.
in a beautiful way. It's like I found the state of mind I was looking for. I don't really know how to describe it other than in that day, it's like I was above myself, looking down on myself. Yeah. It was not crazy. I was hanging out, walking around and talking to people. We were at a EDM music festival.
Oh, wow.
So everybody was doing similar thing. It was a very, very peaceful. Like, it was just so incredible. But it was like I was seeing myself from above, but I'm still looking out of my eyes at the world around me. But there is a part of me that is watching me walk, watching me talk, watching everything I'm doing.
So you had kind of an out-of-body experience.
I think so. Although I'm still looking out of my eyes, experiencing life from my body. But it's like that was the thing I was looking for. How do I see myself from the outside? That's every time that I took drugs.
Yeah.
And drugs, by drugs, I mean hallucinogen, the drugs that will do the thing that I'm looking to do. I think maybe it feels a little bit like what you're talking about in trying all these alternative medicines.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's scary. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I mean, I have people around me saying, you're never going to come back. You're going to lose your mind and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't think that's true, but I have to accept that if it is true, I have to do this because I have to see what else there is.
Yeah. No, I think they say if you do it 5 times, you're clinically insane.
Acid?
Yeah.
Maybe for some people.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who've done it a lot more than that and are extremely sane, but
yeah.
There is nothing scary in those drugs in my experience, because I never took them as a kid trying to have fun. That wasn't my experience. It was as an adult where I realized that I didn't know what I was doing and my life didn't fit me. That was just one of the avenues I took. And was it smart? Was it? I don't know, but I would do it again. I don't regret it. And I'm over it. Like, I just don't even have a desire for it. I don't even smoke weed anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't. Not that I won't, if I'll smoking a pipe, just have a puff with somebody, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Anyway,
why you asked that?
I was just curious.
Have you ever dropped acid?
No. I've never
Have you ever done any drugs?
I've done some marijuana edibles recently.
Okay.
For health reasons.
Has that helped at all?
And some Rick Simpson oil and stuff. It's a funny story. I took some Rick Simpson oil and I took a little too much. And I was talking in my sleep, having a full-blown conversation with myself, and it kept one of my daughters awake, so she asked me to not take it again. So that was funny. I took with the edibles, I was experimenting with the dosage. I took a serious amount once and was kind of slurring my speech and a little bit high. And Annette was worried because I just started on a new drug, so she thought it might be the new drug, and then she realized it was the marijuana.
So you don't take any more?
I still do a little bit, yeah.
Does it help with the discomfort, or what benefit does it give you?
It can help with pain a little, but it's supposed to help with appetite too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it does?
It's
so you're able to eat better?
A limited amount that I've done. It seems to help a little, and my appetite kind of comes and goes. I was off solid foods for a good 2 weeks, And thankfully, I was able to get back, just doing smoothies and frozen yogurt and stuff. I was able to get back into enjoying solid foods. So that was kind of worrisome because they say when you're in a decline, sliding towards death, once you lose something, you don't get it back. So I was happy to get that back.
They say a lot of things.
Yeah.
You always like to prove them wrong, don't you?
Well,
Feels good.
yeah.
All right. I'm going to ask you a few more of these questions.
Okay. Sounds good.
Just because. What mark do you feel like you want to leave on the world, or you feel like you have left?
I don't think I've accomplished nearly what I could have accomplished with my life. Looking back, I probably should have gone to college. I didn't do that. I don't think I'm going to leave a very big mark on the world. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to remember me and miss me. So I guess that's the one mark I'm going to leave, really. There's no legacy, it's not like I wrote a book or anything. And as someone who could have been an author, except I'm a procrastinator, which got in the way of it. There's a book or two I would have liked to have written.
What book would you have liked to have written?
There's one I thought was kind of a cute idea about teleportation that I was going to write, where a teleportation machine only worked to take you from one identical place to another identical place. So it only worked in Starbucks. So I thought that would be kind of cute.
So funny. Teleportation is one of the things that I've been reading about. That's kind of
so I thought that would have been kind of a fun book to write. There was a guy at my church who's lived a fascinating life, worthy of a book. And I started interviewing him, and he kind of got older and gave up on the idea. But I would have loved to have written a biography of the life of one of my friends.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
I was gonna say we can get that started right now.
Yeah.
I love
he gave
learning
up on the idea. But just to give you an overview, he was born in a caravan of Russians fleeing Russia when the Bolsheviks took over. His dad was a general for the Tsar, and so the communists were after him. So a whole bunch of Russians gathered together and left as a big caravan out of Russia. And his parents met in the caravan, and he was born shortly after that. And so the Russians, when they left Russia, they ended up in China. And so he grew up in China. His dad was a military advisor to a warlord in China for a while. And then the communists took over China, so they had to flee China. So they couldn't go to the U.S. because our immigration laws wouldn't allow Russians in because it was during the Cold War. So they ended up going to the Philippine Islands. So he spent his teenage years in the Philippine Islands. And then they finally changed the immigration laws so the exiled Russians could come to the U.S. So they came into San Francisco, and he was a chauffeur and English secretary for a bishop in the Orthodox Church. It's known for miraculously healing people. So he saw this guy like healing people and stuff. So, just those different aspects of his life seemed like it would make a fascinating story. So I would have loved to have written that.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine all the layers inside of that.
I know.
Have experienced so many different worlds and lives. And you said a miraculous healer, and that makes me think back to kind of all this previous discussion about cures and stuff. What has been your experience, or have you had any laying on of hands type healing?
I've had lots of evangelical friends pray over me. I've had, Orthodox prayers. They have special prayers for cancer. There's a famous icon that has healed people of cancer that they do a prayer service with that I've had at my church. And, I've had visiting icons that have actually come to Portland that are known for miraculous healings and stuff.
What's an icon?
An image. So it's like a religious painting.
Because when you said visiting, that's what made me think you were talking about a person, but...
Yeah, an icon is a painting with some strict guidelines on how the painting is done in a very structured manner. So the church, you go to an Orthodox church and it's filled with icons. The church, for the most part, used pictures to teach the history of the church and the Old Testament because most people were illiterate up until the printing press was invented.
Yep.
So all of the early church, they taught from the images because they didn't have the printing press. So nobody could afford to buy manuscripts, so nobody learned to read. So most people were illiterate.
And then they passed these icons around the churches?
Yeah, some of them had been known to cause miracles and healings and stuff.
Like the actual painting.
Icon. So people would go up to an icon and kiss it, and they'd be healed of their disease.
Mm.
So I've done some of that. You know, there are a couple things I wish I had done. I had a friend go to Jerusalem. I wish I'd had him put a prayer in the Wailing Wall for me. The Jews believe that's kind of a thin place where God's closer to them. So they put little prayers and stuff in the cracks of the rocks of the wall. I wish I had done that. I need to send a letter to that bishop. They still keep his body in San Francisco for people to come and pray before and stuff. He actually receives mail, so I can mail the letter and they'll give it to him.
But you're a
I
procrastinator.
know, that's the problem. It gets in the way of everything. So back to your question, I don't know that I'm going to leave much of a mark, but I don't think that's really the purpose of life, really. So I'm not too disappointed about that.
But a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I could have done more with my life. I kind of squandered it.
Why do you see it that way? What feels squandered about it?
Um,
What do you wish you had done that you didn't?
Different choices.
Just a writing. Is that the biggest regret?
We've all sinned and done bad things. So there's, lots of choices I wish I'd made differently, looking back at it. But I think that's just part of life. And that's how we grow and develop as humans.
That feels true. Oh man. God, it's your girls that just keep
Yeah, I
coming to
know.
my land.
That is the one big thing that, the obvious thing is I really wish I'd be able to raise them to adulthood. That's the curious thing. So God's given me cancer and he's taken me sooner, but he gave me children with the responsibility to raise them. So there's that duality creeping in again.
Almost in every one of your answers, there's always a duality. I think that's cool because I think humans that know themselves, I think all humans are a duality.
I'd never really thought about that before.
I guess when I'm saying duality, I mean maybe more of an infinitude, but we are never just one thing. And I appreciate that you are conscious of that in yourself. That's because you're honest about how you feel.
Well, I think that's really important.
And rare.
Is it?
In the Western culture, I believe so.
Thankfully, I started getting that Eastern influence over 20 years ago.
Well, I've heard that once kids hit 11, somewhere between 11 and 13, they stop listening to you altogether. Even if it feels like they are, their emotional growth shifts away from the parent towards the rebellious stage, and it's just part of life.
And that could for most kids, but I don't like taking the clinical approach and applying it across the board because it doesn't always work in every case.
At least you were able to talk them through their most open, influential to you, according to this pop science thing that I heard. I agree with you. There is no cookie cutter. Humans all grow and develop differently.
I mean, they try to look at everything clinically, I think, with child growth and child, raising and stuff.
Is it your influence on them that you feel more regretful to miss, or your experience of them?
I'd say it's both. The experience especially, just, being able to be with them is just an amazing thing. But I don't think I have, as much influence over them as I think I do. They are two wonderful children, though, that I am really going to miss. Yeah, the smartest thing I ever did was marry Annette. We were talking about bad decisions earlier. I was able to balance that with some really smart decisions along the way.
I guess duality does help with balance. Wouldn't bad decisions and good decisions be somewhat of a duality?
Yeah, I guess so.
There's one thing that you're 100% sure of in this world. What is it? What is that truth?
That it ends for everybody. That's the one thing that's true. And so my end is a little early. That is what it is. But it ends for everybody.
Once upon a time, I remember that you were in a car wreck.
Yep.
And you got hit in the back of the head
with a tire jack.
something.
Yeah, the tire jack in the SUV.
Did you not have a backseat head thing?
It didn't go up high enough.
So who's to say that you're actually not way extended past your time?
Yeah. It was a head injury. It was bad.
A flying piece of metal hitting you in the back of the head.
Well, going all the way back to childhood, there was a time where my brother and I were driving into Portland in his 55 Ford pickup that he used to street race. And we came into the tunnel coming into downtown, and traffic was suddenly just backed up, and he was going like 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. And so he slammed his brakes on and locked up his brakes, and we slid across all 3 lanes of traffic. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm seeing cars moving out of the way and moving back in a miraculous fashion. And I knew in that instant, a voice inside of me said, that was because my grandmother prayed for me every day.
Huh.
So I could have died as a teenager in a car accident.
Here you are in your 50s
Yeah.
with a family, children. I mean, talk about leaving your mark on the world. They become their own mark, but
Yeah,
you're still part of
that's
them.
true.
What are you most proud of? What do you like most about yourself?
That's a tough question. Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that.
Could you answer it if you thought about it?
Yeah, I'd have to give it some thought.
Are you uncomfortable answering that question?
I just don't know where to begin with thinking about it.
Because you like yourself so much?
No, I don't think we should like ourselves. I think self-esteem is kind of overplayed and over abused, and I just have never really thought about that.
Hmm.
What do I like about myself? I don't think I need to like anything about myself. I am who I am.
I mean, you kind of don't need to do anything, but what do you think your best quality is then? Maybe if I phrase it slightly differently, maybe you'll have an answer.
My best quality, I think it's my critical thinking skills.
That served you well through your life.
They've served me well. Still, making a few mistakes along the way.
One or two.
Yeah. And it becomes really kind of complicated. That's how life is. I got wrapped up in some gun transactions and spent time in federal prison. And then because of the requirements to be released, unsupervised released, I ended up getting a job at a sewing machine store where I met my wife. So would I do all that over again? Of course. So it's kind of complicated how those things in our lives work together.
Do you think that Adam and Eve feel that way about eating that fruit?
No, I think they regret it.
There's things you regret that you also would do over again because of what they brought you.
I don't think that knowledge of good and evil, I don't think that that's worth losing a relationship with God over. So I think that scale is really imbalanced to one side. So I certainly think they'd regret it.
But only for an instant, and then there's the mudroom and the next thing. I guess because of the nature of God. Because you don't believe that Adam and Eve are in hell.
No, I don't think so. Eventually, I don't think there's going to be very many people in hell because I think it's going to be a place of suffering for people to purify themselves and have a relationship with God at some point. I think God wins when he gets the relationship with us that he wanted.
So you believe in hell?
Yeah.
As an afterlife type of...
Yeah. As a means of purification so that people can have that relationship with God. I think if it's eternal suffering and torment and, we're with God and we get to watch these people suffer, I certainly don't think anybody wins in that scenario. We watch our loved ones suffer.
The Bible does spell that out clearly.
That hell is eternal, but it doesn't say it's eternal for people. That's for Satan and the demons.
I was actually talking about the watching, the seeing, being able to see through,
Yeah,
see between.
The rich man and Lazarus.
Right.
They could see each other.
Mm-hmm.
So even though there was a vast chasm between them, they could see each other and even talk to each other.
Between heaven and hell. Or between hell and Abraham's bosom.
Yeah. And who knows with the new heaven and the new earth, who knows what that's going to be like?
Yeah, who knows? See, now I want to just ask a bunch of questions, be like, what do you think? But you'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
So will I.
Yep.
So hell is kind of the mudroom?
No, I don't think so. I think the mudroom is just a chance to clean myself up a little bit before I see God.
Okay. So with all the mistakes you've made, Mr. Man of Duality, is there any chance that you end up spending some time in hell?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I trust in that the grace of God is sufficient for me.
Is that what makes the difference?
Yeah, I think that's what makes the difference.
Is that the only thing that makes the difference?
Well, it says if you endure to the end, you'll be saved. So I expect to be saved. It does say that in the scripture. But I think being in the Eastern Orthodox Church receiving the actual body and blood of Jesus and growing my relationship with God is going to definitely be sufficient. I don't expect to spend time in hell. But I mean, I guess anything could happen, really.
Boy, that's the truth if ever there was one.
Yeah.
Forget about death. I guess anything could happen, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so got involved in some gun sales.
Yeah.
Because that was something that that was just one of the things you collected.
Yeah.
And
I was working actually for a gun dealer out of Coquille, helping him sell guns at shows and stuff.
you weren't trying to like furnish like the cartels or
No.
like.
The only thing they actually convicted me of was selling guns to someone who lived in Washington, because somehow it's illegal to sell a gun to someone if they live in Vancouver, even if the transaction occurs in Oregon.
Did you know he was from Vancouver?
No. You're only supposed to be convicted if you knew it was a crime at the time you did it. But the jury process is very slated towards the prosecution. So going through a trial, every time the lawyers had something interesting to argue about, the judge would dismiss the jury and hear what they had to say, and then make a decision on whether the jury could hear it or not, and then bring the jury back in. So the jury missed all the interesting arguments. And the jury selection process and stuff. It's just we live in a society, unfortunately, that's slated very heavily towards the prosecution, and that's why a lot of innocent people end up incarcerated.
Do you feel like someone was trying to make an example out of you?
No, they went after me because a buddy of mine was selling illegal machine guns, and they thought if they arrested me along with him, that they'd be able to flip me and get me to cooperate and testify and help their case against him. So I was just collateral damage to their investigation.
So they were actually planning to cut you a deal.
Yeah, but they realized, one, they caught him red-handed with a machine gun, so they didn't need me at the time. They arrested us both on the same day. And two, I didn't really know anything.
You just relied on your critical thinking capacities. And
Well, I didn't know he was selling a machine gun.
oh, I see what you're saying.
So I couldn't help their case, see, because I didn't know what kind of stuff he was up to. And they caught him red-handed with a machine gun in his car, so they had a solid case anyway.
And they figured they'd go for a twofer. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they spent over $1 million, I heard, on the investigation. They flied planes over my house and stuff. Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
crazy.
that kind of feels kind of special. Like, what? I'm that important?
Yeah. I used to think I was paranoid, and then I saw the surveillance photographs.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. But that was a crazy experience going through the justice system. That really gave me a heart for incarcerated people.
Then you ended up in prison.
Yeah.
For how long?
15-month sentence. I was out in 12 months on good behavior, because I'm not going to like start fights and stuff.
And what was that experience like for you?
It was pretty eye-opening. It was interesting. They said they had me in a high-rise E and SeaTac for the entire time. So I was no fresh air, no outside time at all for the 12 months. So my health kind of deteriorated a little. That might have triggered when the cancer started growing.
Is that the timeline about right?
Could be.
With what they projected from?
So it could be that's when the cancer started growing.
With what I think I know about human bodies, that actually makes sense.
We need vitamin D and stuff from the sun.
And
we need to be outside.
Not be constantly stressed.
Yeah.
Was it a super stressful, other than obviously being...
This was kind of a low-key place where most people were at the tail end of their long sentence, or they had a short sentence.
Okay.
Or they were awaiting trial or something. So different housing pods. I ended up starting in one that was more loud and kind of rowdy, and got to one that was a little quieter. They give you job assignments. I ended up working in the safety department, writing reports and stuff for the safety administrator. And he was really a helpful guy at times. But in fact, he wrote me a letter of recommendation for a job, the only one he's ever written in his entire career. So that was kind of neat. But I made some friends, helped some people out. There's one guy who had become a Buddhist that recommitted himself to Jesus, or as he put it, got back in touch with his Christian roots. So just that one encounter would probably made the whole thing worth it. And like I said, it's all kind of connected to meeting my wife and getting married and stuff. But there were people that were in jail for the strangest of things. They got one guy for mismanaging his employee pension fund for a small family business of like 3 people. They got another guy, rich guy, really neat guy, Bill. They got him for selling securities without a license, because he helped the Home Shopping Network line up investors with new products that are being launched. And they tried to claim that was a security. They put a 66-year-old guy in jail for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, what's the polar extremes of your experience specifically in the prison system?
Being able to get them to institute Orthodox services as a part of their services is probably the best thing. The worst thing was there was a couple of guys that were angry at me and were probably going to try to start something with me. So that's why I moved from one housing pod to another, because I wouldn't trade rooms with one of their people. I was in a cell that I shared with an Indian, and it was a 2-man cell, and the cells are the same size, but they put a third bunk on top of the lockers for some of the cells to make them a 3-man. And these are like dog kennel size, and you've got 2 or 3 grown people living in, basically a dog kennel.
Yep.
But I didn't want to trade because I didn't want to downgrade from a 2-person room to a 3-person room. So they got mad, and they were kind of skinhead types and wanted to push that issue a little bit with me. One of them later apologized and said, if you'd known how nice I was, you wouldn't have picked on me. That was kind of neat. But yeah, that was probably the worst part of it.
What's the pettiest grudge you're taking to the grave?
I don't really have any.
I wondered.
If I had a grudge, well,
Other than Meerschaum pipes.
I do have some unfinished business. I owe somebody some money, so I'm trying to collect that to pay him back before I go. I think they'll be really happy to get it too.
Like somebody lent you money, or you?
It was a weird deal, kind of tied up in my whole legal thing. My attorneys ended up taking it. It's like $5,000, and they ended up taking it, and it should have gone to a friend of mine. I was collecting judgments at the time for a job, so I would like go find old court judgments and collect and put liens on people's bank accounts and stuff. And I collected the money from his judgment, my attorney, for my part of my legal fees.
You were like a bounty hunter light.
Yeah.
Why is paying that $5,000 back? Why is that something that's important to you right now?
Because I owe it, and I think it's wrong. I should have paid it years ago.
Why didn't you?
I think part of it, when I got out of prison, I had to pay the court because, they charge you a bunch of court fees and penalties and stuff like that. So I was on a monthly payment plan with the court system for years to do that. So I just never really had the opportunity back then. And then I kind of forgot about it. But, now, I do think back and look back on my life and try to figure out if there were things like that where I need to make amends with somebody.
You have other amends that you need to make other
that's
than that?
the big one. I think that's about it.
So you got caught for gun-related stuff. What's something actually bad that you got away with? Or illegal, or in whatever context, it doesn't matter.
I'm not going to go on the record on that one.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, it could be something humorous too. But
yeah.
There's something there though.
Yeah, there's got to be something.
Don't we all have them?
Yeah. We all have those little things.
Hey, you can't blame me for trying though.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's the risk?
Yeah, exactly.
Out with it.
My kids are going to listen to this, so,
You don't want them to know you as you are?
Yeah. Well, for the most part. There's
Shield
still
them
those
from
things.
some of this.
There's still those things we sweep under the rug or hide in the closet, That's just how it is.
How do you feel about that? Having things in the closet.
I like to keep it to a minimum.
But it feels unavoidable.
But I just think that's part of life. There are those things that we just don't need to talk about.
More and more, I'm having a hard time finding anything like that. It's just, honesty is so freeing.
Yeah.
But that's a different topic. I was just like, what would be something that, could be kind of humorous,
Yeah.
Okay, we try one more thing. What's a really big secret you've never told anyone?
I don't think I really have any secrets like that.
What's a medium-sized secret you've never
I don't
told
know.
anyone?
I'm thinking.
Not even small ones, huh?
I'm thinking.
Like, where's the treasure buried, that you forgot about,
Yeah. I wish there was buried treasure.
It's really all in the house.
Yeah.
In collections of collections.
Yeah, the collections of collections. And I mean, for me, I used that as a savings plan for the future to buy, stuff that's collectible, that's not going to go down in value, and hold on to it. You can always sell it locally or on eBay. And it just seemed like a good way to save, up until 2002 or so, I never understood the financial markets. So we started investing in stuff. So I never really invested in stocks or anything. So my plan was always just buy and hold collectible stuff that I can resell later, or to sell and rotate, at the same time to accumulate more inventory.
It's like saving for your future and doing the thing you love to do.
Yeah.
Wonder why you like collecting, like the collections and stuff. Because it's always how you were.
I'm the king of clutter. I don't know. I have a hard time throwing anything away.
Yeah.
My wife hates that. I mean, I probably still have the stir stick from the first cup of coffee my dad gave me when I was 13. That's just how I am.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Why do you think?
It could be I just don't want to let things go. Because if you have the thing, then it gives you more of the memory of the thing.
So explain to me, Mr. Duality, how you can have such amount of peace in letting everything go if this is kind of who you are, someone who loves to collect collections.
I don't see the conflict there. I think somebody can collect things and be at peace with reality. I just don't see a separation there. Or someone could not collect things and still be at peace with reality.
That's fair. That makes sense. What's your dog's name?
Ruger.
Ruger.
Yep.
Not surprising.
Yeah. Well, that's the name he came with. It was so cool I decided to keep it.
How aware do you feel like Ruger is of your illness?
Something's different. 'Cause I'm not moving around. I'm not walking with their family and stuff. He's seen me in a wheelchair and stuff every night. I think he's pretty aware.
Well, normally I like to kind of I'll go through people's lives, get the whole story. I'm after worldviews and stuff like that. I wanted to ask some specific questions, and I super appreciate your willingness to answer most of them.
Yeah.
And possibly more of them if something comes to you. But what do you have to say?
Not a lot, really.
I don't mean profound. I'm just like, what's on your mind? Like, what's happening in there?
The biggest thing I've learned recently is to not take anything for granted. It's all a blessing. Even the ability to walk 2 steps. And just the more I've lost, the more I've become grateful of what I have, I think.
What's remaining?
Yeah.
That feels a little bit like an answer to that question about what joy you're finding.
Yeah.
Finding thankfulness through loss.
I think we should just remember that every day, that everything's a blessing. And we shouldn't take anything for granted. What does it say in the Bible? The one thing man owns is the air in his nostrils. Everything else is from God.
I'll take your word on that. It's not ringing a bell.
I'm not sure what the context is.
It may be one of the Eastern texts.
And I could have totally botched that and misquoted it too. I'm not exact on my scripture recall sometimes.
Being a human and all. I'm just thinking, how do you find that thankfulness that seems to only come through loss, through pain, through chaos, coming through it, realizing really it's kind of about that same experience of seeing yourself from the outside.
I think it comes from just embracing the fact that life is what it is, and we can't make it more or less than what it is, and that we need to just kind of accept it as it happens. And when we rebel against it and get mad and throw a fit about it, throw a little tantrum, that doesn't really change things, except it takes away the blessing.
How does it take away the blessing?
I think the suffering comes with consolation, but when we become angry about it, we lose that consolation that comes with suffering. Or we can lose it. Maybe not everybody does, but I think we can lose it because we get focused on being angry and resentful and everything else, and so we miss it.
I wonder if the suffering comes to help us deal with the underlying anger that's already there, until we deal with it, and then the consolation is there as a result of processing the things that the suffering is pointing you to.
It could be, but for some people have endured suffering and turned completely away from God, for instance. And how are you going to get his consolation if you turn completely away from it?
God, it seems rigged because you don't know. We're walking through this suffering. No one wants to suffer. No one wants to turn away from God. Yeah. Everybody wants peace.
Yeah. But I have seen people turn away over suffering, even over their children's suffering. There was a lady who turned away from God. In fact, it was kind of funny. It was kind of prophetic statement she made because it was right before I was diagnosed with cancer. But she was, I was in the sewing store and she's like, "You seem like you're a religious person. So let me ask you a question." While I'm trying to sell her a sewing machine, just right in the middle of the conversation. She's like, "So let me ask you a question. My daughter just recently, who has a young child, just recently got diagnosed with brain cancer. How can God do that?" And she went on to just kind of explain that her husband was even a pastor, but she just couldn't understand how God could make someone like that suffer.
What did you say?
I don't remember. Probably not enough.
What would you say now?
Well, you can't let the anger overcome you. You have to press in and get the grace and consolation that comes with the suffering instead of trying to rebel against it.
That doesn't feel like an answer to the question, though. How could God do it?
He just does what he does. And I don't think it's necessarily God that gave the person cancer. They could have worked in a factory somewhere around chemicals that gave them the cancer. I don't think God micromanages everything that happens in the world. He doesn't have to have his hand on every lever.
Why make the lever at all? Why make the cancer lever at all?
I don't know. That's a good question.
This was never meant to be permanent.
Yes.
Was it meant? I guess from your perspective, it was.
What? What's the this?
Life. Physical.
Yeah. And I mean, if you read the Bible, life on earth is supposed to be, fighting a battle against evil and the temptations of the world and the struggles of the world and stuff like that. There's lots of references to that in the scripture. It's not supposed to be a playground where you buy all these fun toys and, frolic around and have fun the whole time. And that's where some of the people who've developed the closest relationships with God have done like crazy things, like lived on a pillar for 20 years or lived in seclusion in a cave.
Okay, if life's not meant to be a playground, does treating life like a playground, is that wrong? Does that somehow detract from what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I think so. Those are the seeds, the sower and the different seeds that fell on different ground. You're familiar with that passage?
I am.
Those are the ones that get choked up by the thorns and thistles, the cares of the world. If our purpose is to become one with God and we get too distracted by the world, then we're not fulfilling our purpose. And at the end, God might say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." Even for Christians, I think that's a dangerous thing because just saying a sinner's prayer does not necessarily make someone have a relationship with God. That's supposed to be the starting point, if that's where they end up. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed that their fire insurance policy might not be good enough.
I mean, you say that tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Do you see it as an insurance policy? Do you see
No.
this whole thing as like a...
No, like I said, from the Orthodox perspective, our goal is to become one with God.
Does that happen in the physical?
There are people who have had that happen in the physical life, and they've developed followings and healed people and had clairvoyance. And, there's all kinds of history in the Orthodox Church throughout the centuries of people where that's happened while they're physically alive. There was even a recently in the 70s, a guy in California, Seraphim. People would come and visit him and they'd see him walking in the woods with a mountain lion by his side. Because I think being at one with God is also being at one with his creation.
So that state of being in the physical world manifests in ways of miraculous clairvoyance, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience with anything like that?
I've just had a minor level of psychic ability.
What did that look like?
Like for an example, 2000, probably 8 or 9 or so, I was in a metal detecting treasure hunting club. And they had a sign-up sheet where you signed into their monthly meetings, and each spot was numbered so that when you signed in, they had a drawing at the end of the meeting where they would draw a little fob out of a jar, and that number would get a 1-ounce silver coin. So the first time I went and I tried this, I just looked at the page. I'm like, which number do I want? It was already taken. But I said the number out loud before the person that pulled the tag out said it. And the person standing next to me was pretty surprised. And then the next month I got there a little early. I made sure I was on time. And for like 3 months in a row, I won. And then I'm like, I should stop doing that before they kick me out. But I would just look at the sheet and a number would stand out at me and I'd write my name on it and I'd win. Yeah. Isn't that weird?
So it's almost like you're
Yeah.
kind of lucky
Yeah. A little bit.
up until.
Doesn't work with lottery tickets. I tried.
Oh,
Yeah. I know. Bummer.
I'm not going to lie. When that jackpot gets to the 1 billion mark, I do probably buy 1 or 2 tickets.
Yeah. See, I look at it the other way. I go against the grain on that one. When the mega bucks gets around 3 or 4 million, I buy a ticket. Because that's a real enough amount of money to change our family's life.
Yes.
But it's, the odds are much better.
I would have thought they're exactly the same no matter what.
No, the odds are not the same. The odds are like 1 in, over 1 billion for the $1 billion one and 1 in over some million for the other one. Yeah. The odds are based on how many people buy tickets. And a lot more people buy tickets when it's $1 billion.
Guilty.
Yeah.
How do you not when you see
Yeah.
that number up there?
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. It's like 1 billion, like it's not even a real number.
I mean, $1 billion would be so crazy. You could park that in a guaranteed locked-in investment and earn 5% on it, and you'd have $500 million a year to play with.
I don't even like thinking about stuff like that because that would make life so much easier.
Well, wouldn't even 3 or 4 million
Yes.
make life easier?
Even 300,000 or 400,000.
Yeah.
Well, scratchets. Does your ability work with scratch?
No, doesn't work with scratches because they come off the reel one at a time.
Yeah.
So you can't like pick which ticket's the winner. And I had things like when I was a kid, I would think about my grandma when I was walking home from school, and then she'd drive by on the way to visit our house unexpectedly.
Your grandma played a big role in your life.
Both my grandparents. On my dad's side, I had just my grandma, and on my mom's side, I had my grandma and my grandpa. And they all lived through the Depression and told me about it, which is part of what made me a hoarder.
I wondered.
Having grandparents that lived through the Depression will do that to you.
Yeah. That you were close with, that you were like you sort of raised by a.
Yeah, I would spend a week or two during the summers at my grandma and grandpa's, and they were just in Eagle Creek.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah. So next to the old plywood factory there, but so I would stay there for a week or two as a kid and stack wood for them and stuff. And I learned to appreciate applesauce on breakfast cereal thanks to my grandma and grandpa.
Not milk.
With milk.
Okay.
It dissolves the applesauce. It tastes really good. You should try it.
Really?
Yeah.
I might just do that.
And they would mix different types of cereal too, which was good. You get a little bit of Cocoa Pebbles to add a little chocolate taste to the milk and a few other cereals.
My grandma ate Rice Krispies without any milk or anything. Just dry.
Wow.
Always she ate
Yeah.
cereal dry.
Wow.
And she didn't have she had, I think she had full, like all her teeth removed and had false teeth in
Yeah.
her early 20s.
Oh, wow.
Because I think they did that more commonly back then.
Yeah.
I'm just almost done with a book called Breath that basically is a study of how breathing and eating has changed face structure.
Interesting.
That if you go back, basically it's 300 years ago, and this is studies of like looking at skulls, like some of these like ancient plagues and stuff like that, and then they have these mass graves, and then they have these preserved things, and then they're going and measuring all this stuff and looking at it, and they're realizing that 300 years ago, very few people had crooked teeth.
Yeah.
Like you go back to the hunter-gatherer, like way back, and nobody had crooked teeth. Everyone's teeth were straight. Their airways were bigger. Everything just worked better. And then this book is all about how, because we forgot how to breathe, that's why we're sick. That's why we can't breathe. That's why we have sleep apnea. That's why, and of course they talk about cancer, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things in there that are so interesting. I'm looking forward to exploring it all. But basically, the first part of it is we breathe through our mouths. And so we miss all of the benefit that our nasal cavities are designed to give our breath, our lungs, everything. And we don't breathe all the way. So it's not that not that filling it up and pushing it all the way up, but it's just like we use such a small amount of our lungs that most of our lungs are stale. Like there's just nothing happening. There's no benefit. And the whole thing could be supercharging our body. And also we look only at the oxygen. Whereas the carbon dioxide is actually, if anything, more important for the body. And so we're all over oxygenated and under. Anyway,
That's interesting.
I don't know. I'm not quite done with it, but
I have found being on oxygen that I've had to adjust the level up to keep my breathing consistent and good a few times now from where I started.
I mean, you're kind of a separate case because, you know, you got other things going on.
Yeah. With fluid around the lungs, putting pressure on it and
Yeah.
stuff and everything else. Yeah. But back to grandparents. I think grandparents are just such a helpful thing to be in touch with the older generations and to learn from the older generations. I think that's something that's kind of lost in our society now. We kind of push them to the side when they've fulfilled their usefulness to society. I think that's unfortunate.
I used to be a caregiver at a retirement home, and you could not be more correct. That's what I was working with, was all these beautiful people who just nobody cared about them.
Unfortunate. So I actually, of my grandparents, I was able to actually be with my grandfather when he passed.
What was that experience like for you?
It was interesting. It was up at OHSU, up at the VA hospital up there. And they, as soon as he started his, you know, kind of the gasp that people make when they pass, the hospital people wheeled him out of the room. Yeah, which is unfortunate, but
So you weren't with him at the end?
I'm not at the very, very end, but right when he started to die, and up until they wheeled him out of the room. So, you know, like a minute or two went by, but we were there with the pastor from his church and stuff. Yeah.
How old were you? Roughly, like 8?
I don't know, 10.
Okay.
Give or take.
Do you remember, like, did you have any sort of experience of like maybe feeling his presence or like anything about his passing? Or it was
No.
just not a 10?
Don't remember anything. No.
Do you remember how you felt when they took him away?
Felt positive. His roommate he was in the room with was, as they were pulling him out, the pastor was trying to go with him, was yelling at the pastor to come back and tell him more about Jesus. Because my grandpa wanted to get one last person on his way out. So that really impressed me. My grandpa had been witnessing to his roommate while he was staying in the hospital.
Sharing his faith.
Yep.
And the guy was asking the pastor to stay.
To come back and talk to him, yeah. And my grandmother was what you would call an old-fashioned prayer warrior. She had a Bible with a list of people that she prayed for every day. Oh, and we found something kind of interesting among her things after she passed. She had a special prayer that she'd written out that she prayed for God not to make her cantankerous like some of her friends had become as she got older.
Oh my God.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. That's an honest woman.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
It was mixed. My parents divorced when I was 16. Yeah, my sister was 10 at the time. It was really rough on her. I kind of abused it because I had a lot of liberty. You know, my dad ended up living in Southeast Portland. My mom ended up living in Hillsborough, and I stayed with my mom for a while. And I stayed with my dad for a while. And my dad would drop me off at my mom's house early in the morning on his way to work so I could go to school and not have to change high schools. Yeah, and I worked after school. So I would take a TriMet across town late at night and then connect with my dad's house from there. So I just kind of abused it to have a lot of freedom.
That feels more like use.
Well, like I did things like if I didn't, I'd feel tired because I'd work after school. If I wanted to sleep in and miss classes or not go to school, I'd have my brother forge a note from my dad for me so I could miss school. So I actually got caught one time because I took 3 days off and they called my dad and talked to him like minutes before I walked in with a note. And I got caught. Yeah.
Embarrassingly,
Yeah,
like
that
all
was
the
embarrassing.
way red-handed.
And I was just like, I just totally admitted it and tried to minimize it and hope they didn't compare the handwriting with all the other notes my brother had forged for me. So I was lucky to just get punished for the one thing. But yeah, the school wasn't happy. But I had a lot of absences in my junior and senior year because I was working full time because neither of my parents could provide much for me, and I needed things like clothes and stuff. So I ended up working on. So that's where I became a little on the self-reliant side. Is I just kind of had to.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
You were always coming and going and passing through. So do you feel like you had roots before you met Annette, before you had a family? Like,
Not really.
this was a huge life shift.
Yeah, big change. It's something I'd always wanted. I'd imagined myself having children and having a family even when I was a kid. And what's funny is my brother didn't. He was going to stay single, and he ended up getting married way sooner, way early. He's got 3 grown children now.
Do you wish you had settled down sooner?
No, because it would have been someone different. And that makes me really happy where I landed. You know, it is, kind of frustrating being this late in life, trying to raise a family and then having the cancer thing come up. But,
This is our interruption, isn't it?
yeah, probably
I'm going to go get a
Here we go.
chicken quesadilla.
Okay. I'll split that with you. That sounds good.
But-
Thank you, Ruger. Oh, can you put him in the, can you lead him into the back and see if he'll go in the back bedroom?
Back here?
Yeah, and shut it.
Come on,
Yeah,
Ruger.
all the way down the hall.
Come on. Okay.
Thank you for that.
We're all safe. I'll be right back.
Okay.
It's a package.
Oh, it's just a package?
I'll bring it in.
Okay.
Okay.
Annette said the oxygen guy would be here soon.
Ready for him anytime. What is there something that you crave a lot?
I've had weird food cravings. I think that's part of the sign of the times, so to speak. So I get weird food cravings. I really craved a piece of pizza from Schmitza because I used to eat them for lunch when I was doing construction work with my brother in Forest Grove and Hillsboro, and so it was kind of a nostalgic thing for me. I'm currently craving a pulled pork sandwich from a sandwich shop that Annette's going to pick up for me.
Pizza and pulled pork. But that's just that's just because you like those things. But is there anything that you feel like has developed because of the imbalance, the illness in your body?
I think there's just the craving for nostalgic stuff like that.
Yeah.
Certain foods I haven't had in a long time. And then I've noticed my taste has changed for other things. Whiskey doesn't quite taste the same anymore. And part of that is I went a couple months without drinking any. I think it kind of reset my palate.
So you still drink some?
Mm-hmm.
The one vice that is still safe for you.
Yeah, I had a whiskey sour the other day without the egg white. It was pretty good.
The taste has changed, but do you feel like you can enjoy it more, kind of like you were talking about before, where it's the loss that makes you appreciate what's left?
Yeah, I think so.
2 questions I ask usually at the end of every conversation. One is, what are you most afraid of? Like, what's that first thing that comes to your mind? Then the other thing is, like, I'll set up a scenario. Like, you're riding your bike up along the trail, and then you're on the edge of a cliff, and something slides out, and you just went over the edge of the cliff, but you're live streaming, and you have an opportunity to say one thing. What would you leave the world with? But it's just falls a little flat in this situation.
What I do, I'd probably say the exact same thing that I said when I was in that car accident. Lord have mercy. That's a valid thing to say, and I think the world could hear that. The last thing I'd want to say is the one thing that I would want at the time, because, I'm on my way to see Jesus, I'd want the Lord to have mercy on me. And, I think that might be why I survived that car accident.
Did you forget to say it now? I jest.
I'd mentioned last week with my meditation mantra that we use repetitious prayer like that. And we even have prayer beads, prayer ropes to count the repetitions, but to say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, the sinner, over and over again.
I feel like a lot of liturgies have that type of sentiment, like Catholic. There's lots of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Except maybe it will be addressed more to like Mary or...
Yeah, you could almost say that's our version of the rosary.
Mm.
The Catholics are more into the rosary
They
for
are.
repetitious prayer.
And I'll tell you, some of the most beautiful experience that I can remember at the retirement home was when Bonnie and her mom, they came a couple of times to pray with a couple of the different people there. And That's what they would do. They'd have their rosaries and it was seeing a bloom of caring in a place where there was no caring. And it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. I feel like there is a place for liturgy and it's beautiful. And humans are mythic creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones that don't know it or deny it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're made. That's how our minds work. That's how dreams work. We are made of myth. Why not embrace it? It's what I've always appreciated about the Eastern, the Catholic, even though it doesn't resonate with me. It feels old and stuffy.
Well,
But I see the beauty.
You haven't really tried Orthodoxy. You should try
That's
it.
true. Okay, there's a in Corvallis.
Mm-hmm. St. Anne's. They're meeting in the Grange Hall now.
There's that white building north of town on your way out towards Adair Village. Every time I go by there, I have this like I just want to see what happens there. I want to see what it's like.
Yeah. Well, you should check it out.
Are they pretty like welcoming of people checking it out?
If you have a beard, they are.
I do right now.
There you go. No,
Maybe
they're-
offset by the.
I'm sure they're totally
hair.
fine. I've heard that since COVID, a lot of the evangelical churches membership has declined, but in the Orthodox Church, we've had a growth.
Huh. Interesting.
I'll tell you one more detail that's more interesting. We get a lot more of men because men are leaving the evangelical church because it just seems a little too kind of sissy for them. Yeah, a little too just kind of feminine or sissy. There's some of the worship songs and stuff, and So I think the more manly church, something like the Orthodox Church, where you come in.
Need a hand? Welcome.
The machine's right behind you. Are you set up to replace the big tank now that we've used some air from it?
So I don't have one this big.
Okay.
It's about a quarter left.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could put an order in for us to get a big one like that again.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks different than the first one I brought.
How quickly will you notice if the oxygen is gone?
Pretty instantly.
What happens?
Um,
Breathing becomes
I
unregulated.
start to get shortness of breath.
How long could you go until it became like an emergency?
I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah. Haven't found that out yet.
Good. Let's keep it that way.
But they found that my oxygen levels, when they first put me on the oxygen, my oxygen levels were in the 70s, and I was still able to walk around and function, even with my oxygen level down in the 70s. But that's when they put me on it at first. Yeah, that's so the cats don't chew on it.
Yeah, that's really smart.
We just got the pool noodles from Dollar Tree and slid them over it.
I'll have to give that suggestion
Yeah.
to other agents.
That'll get us up to 6 of the portables. The portables last a couple hours. So if I was to go to church, since we have lunch every Sunday after church and stuff, I'd need at least 2 to 3 tanks.
So you can still go? Like you have like a
if I had
wheelchair?
the energy, I could be in a wheelchair, yeah, on oxygen.
But it would probably be a monumental task.
Yeah. Getting out of the car would probably be the difficult part.
That gives me a question, but I want to wait until this part's done.
Yeah.
Something I've kind of been wondering about. That'll be sufficiently awkward. I like
Okay.
awkward.
Yeah.
Brings out the real. And I think the girls are going to be back.
Oh, today they're not going to be back till 7.
I guess that's why I picked today.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. It's a whole wall full of extremely cute enlarged pictures of
All of those are up to, they turned 1.
super
One of my
cute
favorites
kids.
is the one on the lower left there, where Anastasia's reaction. That's her reaction to learning that we're on the cover of Time magazine.
That
Yeah. I sat her down, I handed her the magazine. I said, look, we're on the cover of Time magazine.
she's holding a Time magazine with 2 strips of bacon.
That's right.
All that
And
is.
that's her reaction. Isn't that cool?
And take a picture
Yeah,
of
sure.
that. That's so
And I
funny.
go, that's why it's one of my favorites. It's just so funny.
Oh my gosh.
We were at the credit union and I saw the magazine. I had to sit her down and take a picture. I just wanted whatever her natural reaction was when I handed it to her. I have another picture on my phone. I took her to a surplus store and handed her a grenade, and she started crying.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
She didn't know what it
She
was.
just intuitively knew. I don't know, maybe. You know, I think she might have a little bit of my kind of psychic ability. She has a certain way of asking me if I'm good when she's worried about me. So I think she knows more than she lets on.
I'm suspicious that most kids have a lot of supernatural abilities
Yeah.
that I think all humans start
Yeah.
out with them.
Oh, I think so. I think we
and
we
it's
had
trained
those-
out of us.
these things that are rare nowadays, like clairvoyance. I think that was much more common back in the old days.
Yeah. We have become a society of skeptics. And what's the opposite? What is somebody that is unbalanced? Like skeptics and maybe like cult leaders. It's hard to find the balance.
Now, sorry, I think we might have to deal with the background noise for the rest of the interview.
Do you think that, I don't know exactly how to ask this, but having a young family is hard work.
Yeah.
Insane
Yeah.
with two parents.
Yeah.
And you're incredibly limited in what you can
Yeah.
do. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? You really
So
can't.
for Annette, she has to do all that work plus be my caretaker on top of that.
How do you feel about that?
Well, on the one hand, it is what it is, but it's just, I know it's really difficult for her, and she's, nobody's taking care of her. She has to just be that superhero that just goes through it. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about Annette and everything, and just the burden that she has to deal with. She saw her mother go through the same thing. Her dad had Parkinson's and ended up dying of leukemia. And, her mom went through a lot to take care of her dad. And raising children on top of that, it's a blessing that we have a nanny that's affordable, that looks after him during the day while the net can work. And that's the one thing that I think really makes it easier for her, manageable for her, is that she doesn't have to full-time take care of the kids during the day and then try to work around that, that she can still go to work at this point.
Hmm.
So for as long as I can kind of be independent during the day, I'm going to try to be independent during the day.
It's got to be a whole nother level of hard on her to be going to work, knowing that these are the last, theoretic, potentially. I mean, you could recover.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It could happen.
Has happened, could happen, whatever.
The odds
but
are not the best on. I wouldn't
not the
bet on
best.
it.
That's something I was thinking about as I was driving around at work today, is because you said, or she said actually, that she's just trying to keep working for as long as she can. Yeah. And I'm like, that has to be an insanely difficult thing, because obviously she wants to be with you.
Yeah.
And yet she has to go do this thing.
Yeah.
That she has to feel torn.
Yeah.
How is she doing with all this?
I think it's tough on her. And part of that is I just don't know how to talk to her about it.
Now, you've said that a couple of times. What do you mean by that?
My own death and approaching mortality, it's a new experience for me. How do you talk to your wife about that? The fact that you're dying soon. We bring up things in conversation. We talk about things. We got to put a will together and stuff, that kind of thing. But I mean, how do you really talk about it at a deep level?
Just say what you're feeling and what you're thinking and compare notes. And I don't know. That's a good question. I guess the same way you talk about anything. I have a feeling I'm gonna find myself thinking about that.
Yeah, help me out with that one, because that's one of my issues I have right now.
I mean, what my gut says is, how could you not? Like, It seems like that wouldn't be hard at all, because it's like, that's the big thing. I haven't been in it, so I don't know.
Exactly. That's the situation I'm in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Huh. And so what you're finding is that it's really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
The baby bottles.
Yeah.
These go in the garage.
Yeah, if you can get to it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, part of the problem that I have with it is I grew up in a family where we never talked about our emotions. We never expressed our love to each other. So I grew up, kind of shielding my emotions and not talking about them. That's part of the problem that I'm having now.
Western culture male. Welcome to it.
Yeah.
In some degree, that's how I was raised too. Not the same, probably, but
That's the empty one. Yeah, the one we're keeping. Yeah. That's probably a pretty heavy tank to lift out of there.
I can give you a hand if you need it.
I could be
I am capable. At least that's how I see myself.
handle fell off.
Huh.
You won't be able to believe how clean this comes out.
Really?
It will not make sense.
Nice.
I have 22 posted episodes,
Yeah.
plus maybe 3. This is probably my 3rd unposted recording. Every time I'm like, well, who knows if I'll have anything good there. And then I get to editing and I just get lost in it. And what comes out is just profound.
So do you have aspirations of doing full time with the podcast at some point?
Yes, more than that.
No.
I didn't when I started. And not necessarily with the podcast specifically. That's my initial platform. That's my initial kind of diving into this.
Yeah.
I'm starting to understand where I want to go with it. Simple answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah. You strike me as someone who'd be dynamic enough to make a really good cult leader, speaking of cult leaders.
Funny thing, you're not the first person to say that.
Yeah. I think my brother had a natural charisma for it too. He could have been a cult leader and been really good at it.
You and everyone else in my damn life.
Well, then, and I didn't say it like in a negative way. I don't think necessarily being a cult leader is bad. It's just having a something unique and gaining followers.
Even more interesting that you say that. And I didn't take it negatively. I've had to come to terms with this full perspective.
My brother had a trailer that was not retrieved from his storage that he charges monthly for RV storage, and it ended up being full of original relics of the Rajneeshpuram. So he has all this material and memorabilia and stuff and books and stuff. So he actually got fascinated for a while and enamored with the Rajneeshpuram and the Bhagwan and stuff, and started studying about that whole thing.
That's that.
Yeah, the Indian guy that got all these kids from wealthy families to join his cult and donate money and stuff. He had like 50 Rolls Royces or something. It was crazy.
That guy's name is Osho Bhagwan, and he was one of the most prolific speakers. Like, he has so much recorded
Really?
speaking. Yes,
Interesting.
and it is very interesting.
Yeah.
It's extremely like Eastern Indian, Hindu, like from that mindset, but completely separated from it.
Yeah.
It's like he stepped out of all of the different things and just was just like, we're just here. I'm here speaking nonsense to get you to realize that everything that your brain does is nonsense. And that's why there's so much suffering, and peace comes through stilling all that nonsense, which is in some ways opposite of the Christian perspective. But my understanding of that is he had a right-hand woman. And when the group moved over here, because they were looking at different places to go,
Yeah.
basically I think he got addicted to pills is what happened,
Yeah.
like drugs or something. But he was basically sedated.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, you listen to his
Yeah.
teaching, and it is only love and acceptance of what is. Like, it is some of the most beautiful parts of the Eastern mindset. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a bunch of his teachings are on podcasts.
Interesting.
He is one of the people, him and Alan Watts. You ever heard of
Yeah.
Alan Watts?
No.
He was a British scientist,
Yeah.
I believe, who basically became a philosopher.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned
And
him
he's
last
so
week.
entertaining, and
Yeah.
his perspective is so joyful and light and refreshing, and definitely not Christian, but not denying of God either.
Yeah.
Those two are, though, their teachings, their speaking, listening to their speaking is what helped me find meditation.
Really interesting.
Because both of them have what I think of as a joyful universe perspective from Alan Watts, from a very physical world, like the nature of the world around us and ourselves and stuff. And Osho more from a spiritual, like the nature of a man and thoughts and how they interact and all that other stuff.
But I know my brother became very impressed by him from going through all that stuff
Interacting
with the relics and I mean photos and objects and books and different things. Yeah, my brother's read one of his books. I'm not sure which one, but
the words he says are really interesting.
yeah. So how long before we can trade that one for the bigger tank?
It should be coming tomorrow.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks.
Have a good day, Ethan. Okay. You want me to go let Ruger out?
Yeah, let him out, please. Thank you.
We need some protection around here. I'll go
Yeah.
get the Ruger.
Yep, there you go.
Ruger. No one's here.
Yeah. Hi, Ruger. Good doves.
Good dog. You were so patient.
No.
Okay, so
You need a cookie, Ruger?
you wanted a cookie? 2?
Yeah. Just one at a time, yeah. You're such a good dog.
Good boy. Or girl, I guess, but I'm assuming boy. Yummy.
No, he's confident in his gender, and since he hasn't been fixed, he really likes it with the ladies. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He hasn't been fixed?
No, he hasn't been fixed.
Rare and lucky dog.
Yeah, I know.
Lucky,
To get your
lucky
natural
boy.
personality, I think it changes dogs' personalities to fix them.
Oh, well, has to.
Yep.
But people think that they're going to be uncontrollable, I think.
Yeah. We just keeping it natural the way we got him. They'd originally didn't fix him because they were thinking about breeding him.
It's a beautiful dog.
Yeah. Yep, Mom will be home soon.
Okay, so this hits on something that's a very interesting dynamic inside me.
Okay.
All this cult stuff, this especially coming to the Bhagwan Osho, whatever you call them. I mean, what they did, like it was horrible. Like it was so bad, so stupid. But I don't think it was Osho. I think it was the people that considered themselves his disciples.
Yeah.
So, but Osho was a cult leader. Like he accepted disciples, he accepted followers, and to me, that's a bridge I will never cross. But so I'm here listening to Osho, like hundreds of hours of his stuff because it's nonsense. But when you hear it, it's just like it's beautiful and it changes your perspective of things. And it's like it's kind of like nothing matters.
Yeah.
But that's not what I got out of it. What I got out of it is that there's nothing to be afraid of, and everything is the way it's supposed to be. Same thing from Alan Watts. It helped me to still the fear, so that I could process who I was, figure out what was going on. And then I found out that this is the same guy that was the leader of that cult in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
And it rocked my world for
So
a
you
minute.
didn't realize it.
I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
I knew about the cult,
Yeah.
but I'm hearing, like, I'm discovering new podcasts and new speakers like constantly because I'm just entering this world. And I find a voracious hunger for something I didn't even know existed. When I found that out, it unsettled me for a minute and it made me contemplate my own mortality, sort of my own, because everyone's always assumed, because I've been part of cults and I'm not a normal person
Yeah.
in how I think and how I operate. And I'm very charismatic and passionate, and people naturally tend to follow. And it's some people in some ways, but mostly I find people are actually kind of
Yeah.
more standoffish and afraid of that intensity
Yeah.
and that energy and stuff. And I get it, and it all makes sense. And I don't feel like a victim in it.
Yeah.
But it has also made me spend a lot of time thinking about that very thing. Like, you heard of Joseph Adler?
I heard the name.
I think that he was technically considered a psychiatrist, but he was a philosopher. And he wrote a book called The Courage. No, he didn't write the book, but there's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. And then a second one, The Courage to Be Happy. And it's like a discourse, like a Plato, Aristotle discourse, to explain his philosophy.
Yeah.
And basically, one of the key tenets is that in life, everybody has a task or has tasks. So your task is whatever it is that you want to accomplish for your ends.
Okay.
My task is whatever it is that I want to accomplish for my ends.
Okay.
My job is to make sure that I never take on somebody else's task. Like, that's what's wrong with the Western culture, is that we all think we're responsible for everyone else's feelings. It's not my task to tell somebody else what to listen to or believe or not believe or do or whatever. But my task is not to have followers.
Yeah. Are you sure?
Somebody,
That might change in the future. I mean, if somebody has an original idea and it gathers a following, how is that always a bad thing?
it's not, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a prophet or a prognosticator. I cannot tell the future, and I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know,
Write a biography before you go so you can at least leave something for people to chew on. Then you'll have followers after you're dead. Wouldn't that be kind of neat?
I hope that I influence people.
Yeah.
I hope that I stir people to joy and peace and kindness.
Yeah.
What else is there? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing I need to accomplish. There's nothing for me to fight. When I open my eyes and look around me, whether I'm sitting here in front of you, whether I'm on a commercial construction job site where I work as a project manager, or if it doesn't matter how dark, how light, how nice, how bad. When I open my eyes and look around me, I do not see a scary, dangerous world. I see a beautiful, joyful universe filled with people who have no idea what they have.
Yep.
And so
And
everyone's
God
afraid.
made it and he said it was good.
And so they feel like they need somebody to tell them what to do. That's the trap. That's why I'm never going to give people that fake nothing of, let me tell you the right way. More and more, I'm starting to stop talking.
Yeah.
The only time I talk is when I know somebody wants to hear what I have to say, and I want to hear what they have to say. Otherwise, what's the point? So if someone wants to follow me, put weight in the things I say, which change depending on my mood and what I learned yesterday. And I don't know what I'm going to say tomorrow. It's going to be the best I have. It's going to be everything I've got with all my optimistic perspective of the universe. And I'm finding more and more peace.
Yeah.
But like, I know this about myself. And so I know that when people say cult leader, the image that pops into most people's head is Jim Jones or Bhagwan.
Yeah.
And you made an interesting clarification, because I interviewed Aaron Stoll from the Amish community that I used to be with. And he's like, yeah, this is a cult. Of course
Really?
it's
You
a
said
cult.
that?
Yes, because it's not a trigger word for him. It means it's a shortened version of saying a culture. People who conform to cultural norms. So
Exactly.
is the Eastern Orthodox Church. So is the Catholic Church. So is the Western culture. It's humans have to be in cultural bubbles. Like, we gravitate towards that. But it's the crazies. It's the fanatics. It's the people who
That really kind of give it a
Kool-Aid.
bad name. Yeah. You know, they do say that Jim Jones thing, that they actually murdered a lot of people that didn't go along with the suicide.
I believe it because they believed that that's what they had to do.
Yeah.
And there is nothing more dangerous than a self-righteous person on a mission. Nothing more dangerous.
And I'm sure it's the narcissistic people that gravitate towards being cult leaders, you know, because they want control over other people.
But that's not the way they see it. In the evangelical Christian perspective, there's this concept of the world is like, think of Chick tracks and the whole massive road walking off a cliff. And then there's this little hill road that the redeemed are walking up into salvation. The way they look at it is, all these people are walking off a cliff and we have to save them. Like, it's this mission. It's the mission. It's the war. It's the fight. It's the battle. It's all the darkness. It's the white versus black, dark versus light. It's this conflict.
So they'll even fib a little and lie in some of their comic books and stuff. Yeah.
To them, it's not. They actually believe it is that way. And the cult leaders, even the most extreme ones, they have been swept away with whatever their manic mind, because I don't know, like, there's a term, neurodivergent,
Yeah.
that I haven't really heard before in the context that I've been hearing it a lot lately, which just basically describes the typical ADHD guy or girl, ADHD person that can't get anything done because their brain is just spinning all the time and then they have all these ideas and it's just like you can't even do anything. So they've got this neurodivergence. And what you have is you have periods of manic and depressive.
Yeah.
And that manic is so dangerous because it feels like movement. It feels like you're getting there. It feels like you're doing it. And it's the most important thing. And you know it. You know that if you don't do this, the world's going to end. Like everything's going to be bad. The hoogly booglies are going to get you.
Yeah.
They're still, even Jim Jones was doing the best he could with what he had. And it was horrific.
Yeah.
Ruined, like so bad. But
yeah.
history is full
I
of
don't know,
that.
maybe. There are some people who thought that it was a giant experiment. One writer that I read years ago suggested that Jimmy Carter's sister was involved with it and was a personal friend of Jim Jones.
I love those kind of conspiracies.
I know.
I don't put any weight in them, and they may be true.
Yeah, some of them make for an interesting read.
Mm-hmm.
But who's to say? I mean, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. You know, maybe he was doing the best with what he had, or maybe he wasn't. You know, the world does have sinister, evil people in it too.
I'll platform people
You
with
know?
those conspiracies because they're all interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's my mission in life, is to platform people. I consider myself to be a world perspective traveler.
Yeah.
My goal is to get behind your eyes and look out of them and see the world.
Have I been doing pretty good at that with the interview so far?
You're awake,
Yeah.
so yes, you're human, and you have a very interesting perspective. And I'm not here to challenge it. I'm not here to whatever. I'm just curious. And this is just fun.
Yeah.
You're doing fantastic. What we're doing is the goal. I've already achieved it.
Yeah. Okay.
And the editing is fun, and the posting is fun. And I don't have many people listening, but I don't want many people listening. I want people who are interested or get something out of it.
Yep.
I don't think being a cult leader is bad. I think the world needs cultural leaders.
Yeah.
I would like to redefine the word cult,
To get the scary part out of it.
At
for
least
people.
start.
Yeah.
because there are scary, but that's different.
Yeah.
But I don't have the energy for it, and I don't want to. That's not my mission. My mission is I want one little window, one little peek through a window at a time. I want to expose that the world around us, we're all looking at the same thing. We just weren't made the same, so we don't see it the same. And it is all the same, and it is all beautiful. We could all be in harmony. We could. The reason we're not is because I think that you seeing the world differently than me detracts from me and makes me unsafe. And so I have to do everything in my power to make you see what I see.
Which will never happen.
That will never happen.
Yep.
I'm just trying to do the opposite of that.
Yep.
And find people who also want to share a message of a joyful universe and give them a platform.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Help them start their own podcast. Help them start whatever, writing. There's several people who are being like, I could do this too. And I'm just like, trust me, if I can, you can.
Yeah. That's neat.
All I have is curiosity and passion.
Yeah.
I would like to have somebody who isn't afraid to challenge. Help me work through this and just challenge me so that I can think through it in ways I wouldn't by myself. So I appreciate your comments and questions. So Annette.
She's a superhero and she doesn't know it. And she does so much. You know, I mean, she even handles all my scheduling for visits and stuff.
She has been so nice to work with.
With the online thing, it's easy for her to kind of block off a day if she needs to or whatnot.
Yeah.
I did get a little worn out yesterday because I had a 2-hour visit from a hospice volunteer that just comes in and does things like, you know, washes dishes or walks the dog or whatever. I had her walk the dog, but I couldn't think of much else for her to do. So she spent the time talking and getting to know me, and we shared information. So she's a really neat gal. But I had that visit before Jeff's, so I kind of got worn out yesterday. Then I had a nurse, my weekly nurse visit yesterday too. So yesterday kind of wore me out. So today's kind of mellow with just this interview.
How are you feeling energy-wise?
I'm feeling good.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I could use a little more orange juice.
And not at all. Ooh, pineapple orange.
Yeah.
I'll rinse
We'll
your
try
glass
a little
now.
bit of that. And then put the bottle in the fridge when you're done with it, please. Left
Sure.
side.
You want an ice cube in it?
Don't have any ice in my ice machine right now. I haven't run it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put an imaginary one in.
Yeah,
then.
there you go. Thank you. Chill it for me.
I will. I don't know Annette at all. But I know that I'm going to not be able to help myself, but try to get her interview too. Someday.
Yeah, she might be
It would
interested.
just be fun. We'll see how that goes. I also want to, like, I don't even know how to start thinking about this. I want to help, dude.
Yeah.
Sometimes the worst thing you can do is be like, how can I help? Because it's like,
Yeah.
you literally add another burden.
Annette doesn't know what to say. Yeah.
Exactly.
She gets asked that a lot.
That's why I'm biding my time, because
And she always just kind of declines. But she started being a little more insistent, and she's come up with things to say to people. And so she's able to actually get some help for things. You know, people have asked that, and she's been like, well, as a matter of fact, you know, I think it's just a natural thing. When somebody's in a little bit of a crisis or whatnot, we naturally want to try to help, you know, or at least the pretense of wanting to help.
we feel like we want to help.
Yeah, or at least make that statement that we want to help. We want to go on record as saying, you know, what can I do to help you out? But that's such a complicated question to someone who's going through a lot.
I mean, any advice you have for me, any suggestions you have for me, but I don't need it. I'm going to think about it, and that's how the things happen. Is I just be open to it, and then when it shows up, I'll know. But just so that you know, that's where my heart is, and
Yeah,
if I find a place that I can interface, I will.
yeah,
But
I appreciate that.
if you have any
Yeah,
suggestions for that, I mean, I live in Corvallis, and
Yeah.
I'm commuting and working like my life is crazy, but
yeah,
one of the valuable things here, one of the things that is starting to really happen in me is this awareness of what you're talking about, of finding perspective.
yeah,
If not all of life's journeys is finding perspective, but the question is about the communication.
yeah.
Communication is the age-old couples problem,
I know.
especially for people, especially guys who were raised to hide their feelings, shield their feelings, in whatever way. I've had to fight through that. I've had to realize that I don't know how to communicate. I'm a terrible communicator. So I guess what I'm wondering is, have you talked to a professional, to somebody?
I did talk to a social worker. She gave me a little book to read and some helpful suggestions. I haven't read the book yet. I probably really should quickly.
You're a procrastinator.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in having a powwow, a group discussion with somebody who understands these dynamics and understands the communication difficulty and all that?
They provide social workers under hospice. So we have the option of a social worker who's dealt with that specifically, in depth.
Because I mean, you don't have more and more time,
Yeah.
but you do have right now to learn how to communicate. And all I know is learning how to communicate has changed my life.
Yeah.
I intensely feel compassion for that difficulty. How do you talk about it? Because could there be a more difficult
Yeah.
place to try to figure that out? I know people.
Okay.
If you want me to try to, like, you've got resources, brother.
Okay. Yeah.
So
let me know.
I'll beat the bushes. Only if you want me to. Only
Yeah.
if you
Oh,
want
yeah.
it.
That'd be great.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask some questions. To me, though, it just comes down to the whole courage to be disliked, being willing to say the thing. What is the difficulty in the communication? What makes it difficult?
Just not knowing what to say.
Why not?
I don't know.
What makes it difficult to find out what to say?
I don't know. And I'm a natural talker, so I usually can think of something to say, but it's just there's just no words for explaining the situation or talking about it that I can find.
It's not that you're avoiding like conflict or hurt feelings
No.
or difficulty. There's no avoidance in it.
I don't think so.
You don't have
I
any
mean,
feeling of it.
maybe there could be a little bit of avoidance. Maybe subconsciously, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I hadn't thought of that, but that could be true. And that probably is true, actually.
I believe at the end of the day, we do what we want.
At some deep level, I probably don't want to talk about it because I'm just not used to talking about things, and I know it's difficult.
What about with the girls?
Yeah.
You talk about it with them?
I talk about it with them somewhat. I've been doing more and more. There were some helpful things I got from the social worker. She was rather helpful.
Good.
She was Providence with the oncology, so she specifically just worked with cancer patients specifically, not with people on hospice. But she was helpful when I met with her.
This is really interesting, though, David, because
Yeah.
this is how do you talk? everyone's saying, how do you talk about the person who died?
Yeah.
How do you talk about it? Like, I just haven't thought about this before
Yeah.
from this perspective. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder how she feels about
Yeah. Annette?
Do you guys talk about not being able to talk about it?
Yeah, we talk about it a little bit. I mean, we can talk across the surface just fine. It's just how do you really talk deeply and emotionally about it?
How do you feel connected
Yeah.
in the talk? I see. Okay.
And we
This
can
is
talk
interesting
about
questions.
planning things, needing things, what kind of suit and tie I want to be buried in, that kind of thing is easy to talk about.
Yes.
The
The functional.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nuts and bolts. But what about the real?
Yeah.
How do I feel? How do you feel? That's really all it comes down to.
You think so? You think that's all it comes down to?
I think that's what humans are made out of. We're made out of our feelings, our impressions, everything we've learned and experienced.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you talk to somebody who had a different perspective than Christian?
Yeah. Well, there's no guarantee even in Providence. They used to be a Catholic hospital system, but I don't think they're very Catholic anymore.
The first person that pops into my mind is somebody who's a death doula. Like what she does, her natural language, what makes sense to her is helping people navigate.
Yeah.
But that's not what you need.
No.
You're not in trouble. You're absolutely fine.
I'm pretty set on things.
All you need is
There's just a little bit better communication. Yeah.
how to break open your emotions. Well, that was my question about that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and explore that, which must mean that you're accessing your emotional self. I mean, you're doing the work. You care. You're looking at it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. What else is there to say, David?
I don't know. We've covered a lot.
It's a beautiful life.
It is. And it's full of love and joy.
Can be.
Well, just because people don't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Boy, you are right. If you find it in yourself at any point to do some writing,
Yeah.
because you don't need a pen to do that. All you need is to be able to talk
Yep.
the text.
Yep.
I will platform it.
Okay.
If you find you have something to say, I would love to platform.
If I have something that needs to come out, I'll let it out.
If you want it platformed,
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
So what do you got question-wise? Anything else?
Nope. This is the first time I've ever done this. Writing a bunch of notes on sticky paper, talking to other people, being like, what would you want to ask? What would you want to know?
Yeah.
This is going to help me develop my process and change my process. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to be said?
I thought you said there were a couple of questions you always ask people at the end of an interview.
Okay. What are you most afraid of?
At this point, the thing I'm most afraid of is not getting a natural death.
Meaning?
Like if I can't swallow food, hospice doesn't do feeding tubes, so they let you die of starvation, which would be a horrible way to go. Or, getting put on morphine against my will and dying from morphine instead of naturally. I would just feel cheated to not get a natural death
Why are you afraid of that?
because I've seen it happen. And it just seems like such a sad thing. It seems more like a suicide, physician-assisted suicide than a natural death.
Isn't suicide something that you choose?
Sometimes it happens to people when they're not able to choose and somebody else chooses for them.
Wouldn't that be murder?
Yeah, I guess it would be.
So what scares you about it?
That's just what I'm worried
The
about.
pain?
No, I think natural death includes pain too.
Are you worried about if that happens, it's going to change what happens on the other side?
No,
Then why?
I don't know. It's just a really strong preference of mine that I
Okay.
really want to die a natural death. I pray every Sunday at church to die of a natural death and to have a peaceful ending, painless and blameless. So maybe it's because I've been praying for it for so long. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, how do you want to feel in your last moments?
Peaceful.
Who do you want by your side?
It'd be nice if my family was by my side. And that is one thing I worry about, being home alone all day by myself. If something happened and I was to go sooner than expected, then I'd end up dying alone. But I'm not really afraid of dying alone. because I'm instantly, you know, on the other side going to have company. So it's not really a big fear of mine. But I would prefer to have people around me when I die. I think it would be kind of healing for the girls to actually see the last moments.
Is that the big thing?
I think it would be helpful for them to see it instead of just like coming home to a dead body.
Yes. Or going to view you at the
Yeah.
wherever.
You know, in the Western culture, death at home is much less common than in other cultures. In some cultures, everybody dies at home. They don't die in a hospital. Hospital death is so new. You know, in fact, I just learned this the other day. They would keep the body in the home for viewings and people to come in and see before burial for a matter of days. And when they stopped doing that and they went to hospital deaths and stuff, they changed the name of a parlor to a living room because it was for the living and not the dead.
Interesting. As a culture, we whitewash everything.
Yeah.
We disinfect everything.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, we always have open casket services in the Orthodox Church, and it's a common thing for people to kiss the departed person one last time.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's healing.
Yeah.
It's cathartic. Okay, I'm going to try this one.
Okay.
If you could represent your whole self in like a enduring monument to be remembered, what would it be? Could go anywhere. I'm just curious what comes up in you.
Maybe a bust, like bookends. Encourage people to read more.
Something to contain a collection of books.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing you wanted to do
Yeah.
sounds like one of the biggest regrets you have is not writing.
Yeah.
Huh. I'd love to see what you write. Do you have the capacity to transcribe spoken word?
I do have a voice recorder to record stuff, but transcribing on my phone, I think the ability to do that is text size. It's not like manuscript size.
Oh, it's text size. It's manuscript size.
Really?
They open a Word document.
I haven't tried it yet, but I have a voice recorder and a micro SD card. I haven't opened the package on the micro SD card. It's over here.
In right here?
Yeah, the little voice recorders. Yeah, little guy. No, not that. That's for
That's a
checking
pulse ox.
oxygen levels. Yeah,
Somewhere.
somewhere over there in the. You know, it's amazing how much clutter I can attract even in a couple of days.
It is.
Oh, here it is. The Sanyo is designed for undercover stuff, so it's supposed to have a good microphone. I bought that quite a while ago, so it's old technology now,
Okay.
though.
Old technology.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to use this because it's going to require a lot of thought and figuring out. This, my friend, is new technology. I bought this because I am on a waiting list
Yeah.
to do a darkness retreat.
Oh, yeah, you told me about that. That sounds interesting.
6 days and nights in the pitch
When are you going to be
black.
doing that?
Hopefully before 2027, which is what they're
Oh,
booked
okay.
out to.
If I'm still around, tell me how it is. That sounds interesting.
This will record days
Really?
straight.
Are you serious?
Yes. Okay. Off on?
Yep.
On. That's the light that tells you.
Yeah.
And one way it's recording when you speak only, and the other way it's recording all the time.
Okay.
You know everything I know about it.
Okay.
And all it is you just turn it on, and as long as the light's doing what the thing says it's supposed to be doing, it's working. You don't have to think about it.
I appreciate that.
And if you never use it, great. And if you lose it, great. I'll get another one. But I would love to process, transcribe, platform, whatever.
One of the first things I want to do is record myself reading the Psalms, since my name's David, and leave that for the girls so they have something in my voice, you know, more than just 5 minutes, and then just record some other stuff for them.
And as you start and as you sit, more will come always. You just got to start. I hope you do.
Yeah.
This is the one time to not procrastinate because you can do it at any time.
And Annette will probably be wanting to talk to you because she's going to want to reach out to people who've known me for longer than she has to collect stories about me and stuff for the girls.
That's something that I can do.
Yeah.
I am all the way in for whatever
But
either
she'd
of you
love to
want.
collect stories from people that have known me for a long time.
Good.
I have like one consistent friend that I've had going all the way back to the early 90s that goes back the longest. So he'll have some of the most interesting stories. I went to the Great Commission School with him. Jonathan is his name.
Not someone I know.
No, you've never met him. This guy looks like a young Tom Cruise.
Oof.
Yeah. You know, I met Steve Donnelly at the Great Commission School too.
Steve Donnelly is someone that
He
I have
would make a
plans to
great
interview.
interview. Yeah. He would make a great interview.
he would make a great interview because he would challenge and he would speak his mind and he has a lot to say.
Yeah.
Same with Steve Gregg. And you don't probably know John Maher.
Oh yeah, I know John.
I got his interview already.
Nice. I'm not sure where it went, but I used to have a drawing he did, a pencil drawing of Jesus washing a bum's feet. He made like 25 of them or something and gave them out to us. He had gone to the Great Commission School shortly before me. So he was still in McMinnville. In fact, I bought his old car from him. We called it the Jesus wagon because it had the word Jesus across the tailgate. And it was an old station wagon, 60s vintage Ford.
Yes.
So I had a guy approach me, was like, you know, John used to let me sleep in the back of his station wagon. Do you mind? She's like, I'm sorry, I just don't know you.
Who was it?
I'm not sure. Just some random person. Yeah, John's a really neat guy. You should interview my brother.
All he has to do is agree to it.
Yeah. He's interesting because he just kind of picks and chooses, you know, certain things he likes about a religion. And so he'll think that there must be good because there's things he likes about it. You know, like there's things he likes about the Freemasons. I don't know if he's become a Mason or not, but he's wearing stuff with like Masonic logos and stuff on it, and he thinks they're great. And there's things he likes about the Mormon religion. So, you know, they're good. Although they are a little sexist and stuff. They have their own issues, but... And he was really heavily influenced by Osho and reading some of his writings and stuff. So I think he'd have some interesting things to talk about there.
I would love to talk to him.
He'd be a drive out to Forest Grove, but maybe he could show you some of the stuff he found in that RV.
Connect me. And if you ever want to do this again,
Yeah.
anytime.
Okay.
Even if we've already said all there is to say and nothing
I
comes
think
of
we
it.
covered a lot today.
But you're not dead yet. And so
Yeah.
you're still learning.
That's true. Well, I think if there is any kind of last minute cure rebound, I think that would make for an interesting talk.
Are you open to suggestions?
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to get some together for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I have people who will be very certain that they can solve your problem.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to go down those
I'll
roads,
look at the list and weed it out, you know.
great. I'll come up with it.
I am having a harder time swallowing supplements. So I cut way back. I used to swallow 4 at a time. I have to do them 1 at a time. Some of the stuff, if it was going to work, it would have worked by now.
Yes.
So I'm still on the dog dewormer, but a bunch of the other stuff I cut.
I have this underlying belief that no cure will work if you don't believe in it.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you subconsciously believe in something if you don't
Yeah.
consciously believe in it?
Yeah. I've had varying levels of belief with varying things. I was very optimistic about fenbendazole. It had gotten so much attention on the internet that Joe Rogan talked about it on his show. And so a friend of mine sent me the video clip of Joe Rogan talking about it. And in fact, it was interesting. It's a dog dewormer, and a researcher was testing different things on mice with cancer. And he found that the dog dewormer was effective at fighting the cancer in mice. And then the lab worker got diagnosed with brain cancer and incurable. So he took it, not even believing it would help, just like, yeah, it helped with the mice. Maybe it'll help. I'll give it a try. And it cured his brain cancer. And then somebody heard about the liver cancer and they took it and it helped them. And then by that time, that story went viral and a lot of people started taking it. And so a lot of people had good results with it. So I had a really high belief level on that one that it was going to help, and it still didn't.
Well, I'm open to modifying my perspective.
I don't think that's necessarily true, that you have to believe in something for it to exist. I mean, the stool is here whether we believe in it or not.
And it's still going to hurt your shins when
Yeah.
you kick it, when it kicks back.
So I don't really think we have to believe something will work. And I mean, Steve Gregg was even talking on one of his teachings that he had 2 people he knew that were sick. One was firmly convinced God was going to heal them, and they died shortly thereafter and were not healed. And another one was sure God was going to take them, and they lived. So it was the opposite of what they were expressing and believing that occurred.
I'm going to think about that. That reminds me of my grandfather, because ever since my grandmother died 20 years ago, he's been saying, what am I doing
Has it
here?
been 20 years already? Wow.
I've more.
Yeah. Wow.
He's 100.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
She was out weeding the garden when she had her stroke.
Yeah.
And she said, Dad, I'm having a stroke. Went in and laid down and went to sleep. Never woke up.
Yeah, that's
And then
good.
Grandpa's like, what am I still doing here?
Yeah,
They were married for
a long time.
more than 50 years.
Yeah, they were a great example for those of us that grew up in divorced families. Both your grandparents are neat people. I really enjoyed getting to know them. Your grandpa used to pray over me that I would find a good Christian woman to marry.
Sounds like him.
Yeah.
And Grandma had the
Yeah.
best back scratches. Every time. She would always cut hair. And every time she cut your hair, at the end of it, she had these perfect, nice, long nails, and she'd just scratch your back.
Nice.
So
That's
good.
interesting.
Mhm.
I remember watching her shoot an apple or something out of a tree with her little pistol. That was kind of funny.
I would have liked to interview her.
Hey, your granddad had an interesting life too. I read his little biography thing that he wrote about himself. That was a good read.
He had a very interesting life and tough.
Yeah.
He'd be on an interview too now.
Yeah, I know. He's unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Some years ago, he needed to get something off his conscience. So he told me about an incident that occurred when he was a police officer that he felt bad about. He probably told it to several people, I don't know, but he really needed to get it off his chest. So I thought that was interesting. Somebody had robbed a store and taken the cash register tray and thrown it in the river when they took the money out. And he took the perpetrator down to the river to help him get it out of the river. And they got it out of the river. And he's like, "Did you look under the tray?" The guy was like, "No." So your grandpa turned his back and let him take the rest of the money. That's probably what I would have done. I would have had some sympathy on the guy, that he didn't get as much money and he was going to do time over it anyway. So I don't know that that was necessarily a bad thing, but he really needed to get it off his chest.
Something illegal or bad that you got away with. You answered the question, if not for
Yeah,
yourself.
I did.
Good job. What I remember is he said the thing he felt the worst about is that he'd always be coming home bloody
Yeah.
because it was a different world back then. He said he'd pull a trucker over and they'd get out of their truck with a lead pipe. And like sometimes he said he'd have to knock out somebody to take him in. He's just a scrappy guy.
Nowadays, if you do anything at all, you get, resisting arrest, you get compounded charges. And that's part of the other thing with the justice system. That's one of the problems with it is they do the stacking thing where the police officers work with the prosecutors. So the police officers write you up for as many charges as they can. So the prosecutor has room to negotiate so you feel like you're getting a good deal when you plea bargain. And that's why 90% of cases get plea bargain and less than 10% of them go to trial.
It's become a machine.
Yeah.
Justice is blind.
Yeah. Has been for a long time. Back in the old days, you used to pick your own jury too. Your own friends and family or whoever you wanted.
Seems like it'd be a lot easier to get off.
Well, no, because your friends and family would uphold justice and they'd be the ones that would know whether you were guilty or not. I mean, back then we had kind of a common moral framework. So it'd be easier nowadays. That's why they don't probably, one of their reasons for why they don't do it anymore is nowadays it would be a way to get off, but they've just stacked everything that they can pro-prosecution. Like I said, with the 90% negotiation rate on plea bargains so that they don't have to tie up all their courtrooms with trials, then they can go after more people.
Kind of understandable because there's so many more people.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's already after 5.
It is. I really appreciate you taking the time and the energy.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to leave something for the girls to be able to see or listen to.
I'm good.
So is that a wrap?
Sure.
Thanks for traveling another world with Emotion Art. If you enjoyed the conversation, please let us know. You can email me at michael@thisisemotionart.com. Your feedback helps build our momentum, which is just going to bring you more stories from other worlds. So let us know what you think, good, bad, or otherwise. Yes, please.